We're live. It's the 10-minute warning, everyone. We have 10 minutes until the start of our 221,001 Core 1 A+ study group. We're back after a couple weeks off. It's kind of nice to be back. Things seem to still be working, so that's good. We've got recordings going up here, recordings going here. Just a little sanity check for me. Presentations is ready. This presentation is ready. Cameras look good. You can't see them, but I can see them. They're up there. They're up there. They're up there. You just can't see them. That looks fine and ready to go. Let's get over. Oh, hi, chat room. There's the chat room. Hi, everybody. Hey, everybody. I can actually see it now. See, there's the chat going by. Good to see everyone as you're there. Thanks for joining us. We got Canada's checking in. Hollywood, Florida. Used to work downtown Hollywood, Florida. As a matter of fact, around the circle. Sure did. Worked there at a value-added reseller based out of Hollywood, Florida. It was a very treasured time in my life. Dude, I have 3 to 4 weeks before SY601 drops. Am I nervous? Oh my gosh, is there something to be nervous about? Now I am nervous. What's that about? There's not going to be a book out until January. Probably the best ones are going to be out February, March. So, and I'm doing pretty well with making my 601 content. So there's nothing to be nervous about here. There will be plenty of SY0601 content. It's a big one. It's a big exam, much bigger than the A+ or Network Plus exams. So there's a lot to do for those. Got to get it done. We have to get all the questions done today. Today I've got questions now from the 221,001, so we'll do that. I've got what else is ready? I think the after show, we got plenty of that ready to go too. So we'll get that going as well. Other folks checking in: Annapolis, Maryland, West Virginia, DC is here, London, UK, LA is here. I'm assuming that's not Lloyd Acres. Orlando, Florida is here. Welcome, Orlando. Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Thank you for being here. Namibia is here. Fort Bragg, Houston. Welcome. Virginia is here. Dallas, Texas. Welcome. Sri Lanka, Brooklyn. France, welcome. Detroit. Louisiana, feeling for you, brother. That looks like it's going to be a storm. You know what I'm saying? So stay safe. Puerto Rico, Mesquite, Texas. Welcome. Baltimore, Egypt. We got plenty of people check in. And I'm so glad you're here. We're doing all 221,001 in this first hour. But, of course, in the second hour, we're just opening up the phone lines. We'll do that. Any jokes today? There'll be as many jokes today as there are any other times, which is donut, baby. We don't really do jokes. Not really a joking. The problem is not the joke. It's that you watch the replay and have to listen to it again. That's the problem. That's why you don't see a lot of comedy in my training courses, because people watch those videos 2 and 3 times. I could not imagine having to listen to the same humor more than once all the way through, especially when you're trying to learn something. So maybe that's the gig. I'm fine with that anyway. Thanks everyone for being here. There's Scotland, San Diego, welcome. Chicago, Brooklyn, Panama, welcome. Australia checking in. It's kind of late in the day, isn't it? But thank you for being here. Philly, welcome. I know it's I can't do everything. There's no music. There's no jokes. There's no entertainment here whatsoever. You'd think we'd have something here going. I could learn to play the guitar maybe. I don't know. Sing a little bit. No one would want that. Suddenly the viewership would just plummet. It would just drop right out. Let's just stick with technology, and I think we'll all be happier for it. I think that's probably the case. And I can't put a lot of music in my videos anyway, because YouTube will just pull them down because it says it sounds too much like somebody else's music that they did. So I ran into that problem years and years and years ago. That's why there's no music. If you'll notice on any of my videos, on any of my live streams, there's no music at all, which means I never have to worry about my videos being taken down because of a music conflict, real or imaginary. for this. So that's sort of where that is. That's the cons. That's the idea behind it anyway. That's the reason in my brain. Maybe it gets better soon. Who knows? We'll have to figure it out. See if it's gonna work a little bit better. I have all those things there. In my training videos for 1001 and 1002, where does 1002 start? Well, it starts where the 1001 ends, of course. See, somebody wanted jokes, so that's what you get. The index of them is on my website, and there are YouTube playlists available as well that separate them out. So you can have a 1001 playlist and a 1002 playlist, or they're on my site. They're separated into separate indices as well. So you're fine there. We got 4 minutes before we get started. Calendar's flagging me and letting me know we're doing that. How's life? Well, you're looking at it. This is it. Right now, it's all about creating the next Security Plus content. That's what I've been working on. So it's really been me in front of this computer and typing things all day. So we'll figure that out. You're going to take 1001 next month online. Great. You heard it's a pain. It can be. I guess if you prepare for it, it's not really a pain. Any advice for at-home test takers? Well, we can talk about that in the after show for sure. There's a lot of challenges with getting it set up, but if you do your homework, you know what they're expecting. It's just another thing you have to do. As if it isn't hard enough to remember all the content, now you have to set up your own secure testing center in your house and then deal with them watching you the whole time, which is not a big deal. I'm kind of used to that at this point, but it's one of those where you have to be ready for it. You have to clean your desk. This desk would not work for a testing environment. They make it a pristine testing environment. So that's one of those we have to work through. But as long as you're prepared for it, I think you're in good shape to have that. Yeah, taking the test tomorrow in your bathroom. Some people end up doing that because it's a room you can close off, you can lock it, nobody can come in. You can really be prepared for the worst case scenario there. And then it's completely quiet. Nobody's coming in and out or banging the door or that type of thing. So it works out perfect. And you can lock it, of course, so nobody walks in and messes the whole thing up. And that's not a good situation either. It's just preparing for those. And if you're prepared for it, I think you're fine. I don't think it's a big deal at all. They've gotten pretty good at it, at least for the people that are administering it. The proctors are very good at managing the process. So that's good. So that's just the way it goes sometimes. That's the only situation you have. You do what you can with what you got. We need to make sure audio's set up. Okay, I think I'm good. I think I got everything I need here. We're about a minute and a half out. We'll get this thing started. Presentation should probably go live. There we go. That looks good. I think that is it. I got a bunch of questions on the Core 1 today. I don't remember any of them because I wrote them about a week ago, and it's been a lot happening content-wise in a week, so I've just forgotten everything. So it'll be new questions for all of us. It'll be a whole new experience for you and for me. I don't know if that's intended. I don't know if that's how it should work, but that's how we're going to do it anyway. All right, 1 minute to go. 1 minute, Mr. Sinatra. We'll get ready to get this thing started. Make sure that all of this looks okay. I think there is, we're going to, for those of you kind of watching the weather, we're based out of Florida. It looks like we're going to miss this hurricane coming through, but concerned about the folks in Louisiana. So that's, for those of you watching the replay, maybe we'll already know what goes on. It's just one of those things that you got to keep an eye on. Let's see if we can get this ready to go. I need a presentation. That's not a presentation. That is presentation. Yes, connect to my local network. That's what you want to see when you're trying to get things going. Green button. That's what I like. It's a green button. That looks good. That looks good. Wow, we're in really good shape here. I think we might actually make this happen. All right, 12 noon, everybody. Let's see if we can get this study group underway. Let's hit a few buttons and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2020 Professor Messer A+ study group. This is our Core 1 221,001 A+ study group. We have another one in a couple of days. That's our Core 2. But now we're going to do all Core 1. For this next hour, I will be asking you questions from the Core 1 exam. I will be hopefully getting your answers for the Core 1 exam. We'll be talking about those. And after the first hour, I'll open up the phone lines. You can call in or ask questions in the chat room as well. So there's a little bit of everything going on today. We're so glad that you're here and joining us. The way that you can participate if you are here live is you pop up in a new browser window and browse to professormesser.com/QA. Now you can, of course, do this. There's an app. Of course, there's an app. There's the Socrative student app. Gets you exactly the same information at the same place, but sometimes you just need an app. It's really important. If you do use the app, it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Now, if you are watching live, you can do that. If you're not watching live, you can still follow along. We have things that you can follow along with us, so don't worry about that. If you are gotten to that page, professormesser.com/QA, or you've opened the app and gone to the Professor Messer room, then there will be a question waiting for you. We call this our rewind question because it's a question from last month. We're going to see how much you remember, and we're going to test and make sure that you can get into the Q&A room just fine. The question asks, a network administrator would like to configure a Soho firewall to allow external access to a server on the internal network. Which of the following would provide this configuration? Would it be port forwarding, SSID broadcasts, WPA2 encryption, QoS, or MAC filtering? We will come back to this question in just a moment. Be sure to lock in your answer. And of course, as always, no answers in the chat room, please. Well, thanks for being here. We're going to go through a lot of different topics today from the 221,001. But remember that you can view every single one of our videos, all of our courses, every minute of every video is available on the YouTube. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube and do exactly that. The other pieces that you'll find are daily pop quiz questions that you can find on Twitter or on Instagram, professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Instagram. There's also continuing education unit credits that I will talk about at some point during this first hour. So if you're collecting those CEUs, just listen in sometime in this first hour. You'll hear all about it. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, it won't matter to you. You can just ignore everything I just said. Today, we're going to talk about the 221,001. This is obviously paired with the 221,002. It was released in January of 2019. We expect that this exam will probably retire sometime in the area of July of 2022. So if you are someone who is currently working on their 221,001 or the 221,002, you have plenty of time before that exam is ever retired if you are watching this in October of 2020. The exams are 90 minutes each. On the 1001, you need to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. So it's one of those where it's not horribly difficult to pass, but that's still a pretty high number in such a narrow range. So it's one where you do have to know your stuff to be able to pass this exam. Today, we're going to talk about topics from the 221,001. Sometimes you'll hear that referred to as the Core 1 exam. And this will be on mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, hardware and network troubleshooting, and potpourri. So those will be all of the topics that we will go through to be able to figure out all of this. As I mentioned, all of my course videos are available for you to watch online for free. There's also an offline version of these videos that I bundle together with my course notes, with my practice exams, with my exam hacks ebook, with a special Q&A access to this study group that you can find on my website. Is my 221,001 Success Bundle. You can find all of that available to download right now. There's also a physical version you can purchase as well. If you'd like more information on that, it's on my website at professormesser.com/1001success. 1001 success. There are also some free Q&A on my site, the Take 10 Challenge, 10-question practice tests that I have on my site. These are for A+, Network+, Security+. Hundreds of questions are there. You can find those at professormesser.com/take10. A video replay of this is available immediately afterwards on YouTube, but you can also get an audio version of this in a podcast form that can be automatically downloaded to your podcast listening app. You can find that at professormesser.com/podcasts, and you can find audio versions of the A+, the Network+, and the Security Plus study groups. About a day after this, my marketing manager, Lori, goes back through this entire study group, and she puts timestamps on everything that we do, every question, every answer, everyone who calls in, so that you can easily find this information after the fact. So Lori is listening in now. Hi, Lori. Thanks for listening and doing all these timestamps. If you're in the chat room, give Lori a hello. It's so nice that she's able to do this for us. So you can go back through years of these study groups and jump right to specific timestamps. Now Google puts a little piece at the bottom of the bar, the time bar at the bottom, so that you can, of course, find all of those as well. Also let you know that my course notes are available on my website at professormesser.com/1001 notes. I, of course, tell people, go through all of my videos, take your own notes, but if you just don't have time, because there are 137 videos, 18 hours, 29 minutes worth of content, this may be a very easy way for you to get all of the notes all in one place, all downloadable, all in a PDF format. You can put on all of your mobile devices. Find out more about that at professormesser.com/1001 notes. Okay, let's now go back to that question we asked earlier, which was, a network administrator would like to configure a Soho firewall to allow external access to a server on the internal network. Which of the following would provide this configuration? Would it be port forwarding, SSID broadcasts, WPA2 encryption, QoS, or MAC filtering? So a number of you have answered already. 78%, I would say that's a pretty strong majority, say the answer is port forwarding. That's what you want to do, is set up port forwarding on the device, and that's exactly what you would do. Port forwarding, kind of a fancy way to say an inbound or static NAT. This would be one that you would set up on a Soho router, where you would map an external IP and port number to a device that's on the internal network with an internal IP address and port number. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as a destination network address translation or a static network address translation, static NAT. So this is one, you don't often see those words, though, in a Soho router. They aren't expecting people at home to really set up and have a Soho device and understand what network address translation is. So they really try to make it a little bit easier. It's port forwarding. You're just forwarding a port. That's so much simpler. Why don't we make everything easy to remember like that? Port forwarding is the answer. So if you did answer A, you probably remember this from last month, or maybe you just knew it was port forwarding. Either way, you got it right. That was the right answer. If you wanted more information on that, you can always go back and watch next month, or you can, of course, go back and have a look at that video for all of those. One of the things that I like to do on the study groups, now that we're in there with the Q&A, we know the Q&A is working, you're able to see everything that's there. I like to give you a performance-based question as the first new question of the month. Now, for those of you that haven't taken the A+ exam before, you may not be aware of this, that the exam is a combination of different styles of question. The bulk of the exam is multiple choice question, sort of like the one we just had, where you have a question and then you have multiple answers to choose from, multiple choices. But there is a handful of questions that you will get at the very beginning of the exam that CompTIA calls performance-based questions. You'll sometimes see this written as PBQs, performance-based questions. Those performance-based questions are anything but multiple choice. They could be drag and drop questions. They could be fill in the blank questions. They could be matching questions. They could put you to a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. They could put you to a Windows prompt and ask you to perform a function. There might be, you might have to put things in order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. You never know exactly what these questions will be, but the content of the questions always comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So it's just a different way of asking you about content that you already know about. So don't worry so much about how they're asking the questions. Instead, worry that you know the content, because if you know the content, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. So I have for you a performance-based question of the month. Let's do this performance-based question right now. This is a matching question that asks, match the technology to the description. Some of these descriptions will not be used because you'll notice I have 4 technologies and I have 6 descriptions. So there'll be 2 descriptions that are kind of left over at the end. For those of you listening in, let's go through each one of these. The technologies are a router, a repeater, a firewall, and a switch. A router, a repeater, a firewall, and a switch. Now I have 6 different descriptions. The first description is provide power to a device through the network cable. The second description is forward traffic by destination MAC address. The third is extend the length of a network segment. The fourth is block application traffic flows. The fifth is forward traffic by destination IP address. And the last description is connect a wireless network to a wired network. So those are the 6 different descriptions. We're obviously only going to use 4 of those to match these up. If you think you know the answer, no answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. We will instead have you put the answers in at professormesser.com/QA right there at the bottom of the screen. Head over there. And this is a matching. If you think they're already in order, simply put in 1A, 2B, 3D, 3C, and 4D, and you're done. That's it. I'm watching the answers come in right now as you're putting them in because this is a fill in the blank on my side. I see the answers as you are filling in this blank to have all of that there. Now, there's 2 left over at the end. If you happen to know what technologies would fit those particular 2 leftover descriptions, that little bonus for you. Add that to your answer or in your mind, lock it into your brain, lock it into your head. Figure out, okay, I know what those 2 things are. So the 2 that are left over, see if you can kind of reverse this and figure out what technologies you would slide in to be able to use those. So you've got a couple there. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answers. It's a fill in the blank, so you can put it in as 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D. That should lock all of those in. And one of the things that if you ever look through these, there are a number of technologies in the 220-1001 exam. They want to give you a pretty good overview of what these technologies are. So it's really useful if you know what they are. I'm only giving you 4 in this particular example, I guess 6 if you happen to come up with the extra 2. But there's a lot more you need to know about. There are computing technologies and networking technologies and storage technologies and so many different, very broad range that you need to know. So make sure that you have those exam objectives. If you don't have the exam objectives, go get them. professormesser.com/objectives. There's a link that will take you over to the CompTIA website. So make sure you get your hands on those. Those are really, really useful. They could be the difference between you passing and not passing this exam. That's how important those exam objectives are. Let's go through these questions and see how we did. Let's start with these technologies, the router, the repeater, the firewall, and the switch. Which one of these fits the router configuration? I think that's the one we should really focus on first. That matches answer E, forward traffic by destination IP address. That is the one that matches the router. That's what routers do, is they forward traffic based on an IP address. That fits the best description that we have here. The second is a repeater. A repeater can be used for many different things. The one that we have in our list is answer C. We can extend the length of a network segment. That's a very common use of a repeater. So any type of network segment, a copper network segment, a fiber network segment, lots of those that you can work through. That is the answer for repeater, is to extend the length of a network segment, option C. Third on the list is firewall. Firewall matches with D, block application traffic flows. And application traffic flows certainly fit well with common firewalls of today. These days, we are using application-aware firewalls, what a lot of people call next-generation firewalls. They understand the applications. So you simply tell the firewall, block Twitter, please, and it blocks Twitter. Or maybe you'd like people to be able to read Twitter, but not post to Twitter. You just create a firewall rule that says, allow people to read Twitter, block it if they ever try to post to Twitter. That's the technology we have these days with next generation firewalls. So that certainly does fit D, block application traffic flows. And lastly, switch is the one on our list that fits best with B, forward traffic by destination MAC address. So those are the four that match. Router is forward traffic by destination IP. Repeater extends the length of a network segment. Firewalls block application traffic flows. And switches forward traffic by destination MAC address. Now, of course, we had two left over, which was A, provide power to a device through the network cable, and F, connect a wireless network to a wired network. So if we had to find a technology to fit into those, we're going to reverse this out, go backwards for this. Power over Ethernet is a perfect choice for A, providing power to a device through the network cable. That's a great way to power things. And if you have a voice over IP phone, if you have an access point, these days, if you have a laptop computer, you are able to provide power to those devices through the network cable itself, either directly from the switch or by using a device in the middle to be able to inject that power onto the network cable. Lots of options there. And connecting a wireless network to a wired network, an access point, is perfect to be able to do that. That is one that you could use to be able to effectively create a bridge. Those are bridges to be able to do that. So a bridge is a good choice to be able to make that happen. Those are the 6 technologies and the 6 descriptions. Now, what if you on the exam got 4 of these, but not the other 2? Or maybe you got 3 and 3. Do you get partial credit for these? CompTIA has said officially, whenever you are looking at their website, they have a frequently asked questions on their website. Officially, they have said that if there is a question that lends itself to providing this partial credit, that you may or may not get partial credit. It's a non-answer. They did not answer the question in the frequently asked questions. They said sometimes we will give you partial credit. They said sometimes we won't give you partial credit. So a non-answer. So it's a very common question, but unfortunately we just don't know. My recommendation, just do the best you can. If they end up giving you partial credit, we'll take it and we'll keep going. But that's one of those situations where you just don't know. And really, you're not going to know to be able to do that, because I think if you're ever in a position where you want to be able to know what the grading was like, that's too bad. They don't tell you. The grading is a mystery. So the best you can really do is just keep going, get the best you can. I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be able to work through that. So there is your performance-based question of the month. If you're ever wondering if you should go back and watch other videos, you get a different performance-based question every month. So go back over the last year's worth of these, and you'll be able to really break down different performance-based questions, asking different topics in a different way. Try to mix them up every time. So be able to make that happen. This is a good place to jump off and start with our multiple choice-based question. So let's jump into more multiple choice at this point. This next question we have, ask this question: what type of memory is commonly found on a DIMM? What type of memory is commonly found on a DIMM? Is that ROM? Is it SDRAM? Is it cache? Is it SRAM? Or is it non-volatile? You've got 5 options to choose from. What type of memory is commonly found on a DIMM? Is that ROM, SDRAM, cache, SRAM, or non-volatile? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. I would hate to have to delete you or ban you from the chat room for doing that. So that way you're able to lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. Yes, you'll probably be familiar with this one. This is one, hopefully, first you have to know 2 different things, or really more than 2. You have to know what a DIMM is. That's the first thing you have to get through. The second thing is you have to know what all these other things are. You have to know what a ROM is. You have to know what an SDRAM is. You have to know what cache is. You have to know what SRAM is. And you have to know what non-volatile is. So those are all of these terms we have to know. A lot of times people will use flashcards to memorize what these things mean or what the letters stand for. And what you'll find on the exam, there's not a lot of questions that ask you what these letters stand for. You are not going to get a question that asks you, what do the letters DIMM stand for in the word DIMM, in the acronym DIMM? You won't get that. They will instead ask more of a question like this, where you're working with the DIMM. How does that correlate to this other thing associated with the DIMM? So that is one where you really do have to walk through your brain and figure out multiple steps to finally get to the end of what this question is. We'll talk more about question styles in just a bit. Let's answer this question, though. What type of memory is commonly found on a DIMM? Is it ROM, SD-RAM, cache, SRAM, or non-volatile? 63% of you say it's SD-RAM is what you would find, but it's double digits for 3 others of these. 13% say SRAM, 12% say non-volatile, 10% say cache, only 3% said ROM, which you are correct was a character in the movie Tron. This is one of those situations, though, where you do need to understand what is on that particular piece of hardware. What are you working with when you work with that hardware? The hardware, was it RAM? I thought it was ROM. Was it RAM? Either way, the correct answer here was SD-RAM, the synchronous DRAM. That's what we are working with when we're working with these, is synchronous DRAM. SD-RAM is one that is synchronous. We call it synchronous because it syncs up with the clock that's inside of the system. This conversation that's going back and forth between the memory and the memory controller, which in many cases is now integrated into the CPU, is constantly on a separate cycle. They all know that the cycles are coming through and what they are doing with them. So there's always an expectation there'll be a certain amount of memory at a certain timing all the time, constantly happening on a system. It's synchronized with the clock on the computer. It happens constantly. So this is one where you'll find that this is the type of memory we're using on all of our modern PCs these days. You're not going to find those DRAM that you would use in very, very, very old computers. You don't see those around any longer, because when you know that there is a certain amount of data coming down a line at a certain time, it's much easier to manage the entire flow of information across the system. There's no surprises. It doesn't come quicker than you would expect. It doesn't come after you would expect. It's something that's very easy to set up. So this is one where SD-RAM is, if you've ever plugged in memory or upgraded the memory in your system, you've upgraded it using the synchronous DRAM to be able to make that happen. Very useful, by the way, to know how to upgrade memory. You will be looking at doing some of that as part of the exam objectives for the 221001. But that also means that if you answered B, SD-RAM, 63% of you got that one absolutely right to be able to have that there. Now, we had other options here. For example, SRAM, static RAM, is RAM that is commonly used in other parts of the computer, not used on a DIMM, however. Similar situation with ROM, a read-only memory used in other parts of the computer, again, not on that DIMM module. So that's one of those situations where there's different kinds of memory in your computer, in different components. You have to know where those the memory types are. A good example of that is the cache memory. There could be cache in many places on your computer. We commonly think of cache memory as being inside of a CPU or part of the CPU subsystem. And non-volatile memory, very commonly used when you're starting your computer, contains your BIOS, for example. The BIOS is commonly stored in non-volatile memory. It's non-volatile because it does not constantly need a power source. It's flash memory. It's non-volatile. So that's one of those cases where you have to be able to unplug the computer, take it somewhere else. It doesn't have a power source, and yet when you plug it back in, it somehow is able to work properly. That's because the BIOS is in the non-volatile memory. Good place to go to be able to get that. So hopefully you're familiar with some of those. The read-only memory is the ROM. That's the one that you will find for this. There's ROM inside of your computer as well. Probably not where you expect these days. It used to be that our BIOS was in ROM. These days we put the BIOS in a non-volatile memory, which allows us to upgrade the BIOS over time. A good place to be able to have that. So if you did answer B, SD-RAM, got it absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another one. We've got plenty of questions to go through. This next multiple choice question asks, a system administrator would like to centrally manage all desktops in the cloud. Of course they would. Which of the following would fit this description? Would that be metered? Would it be rapid elasticity? Would it be hybrid? Would it be VDI? Or would it be cloud storage? A system administrator would like to centrally manage all desktops in the cloud. Which of the following would fit this description? Would it be metered, rapid elasticity, hybrid, VDI, or cloud storage? That is one where you will want to lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. You'll probably get quite a few cloud questions on your exam. There's a whole section on cloud computing on the 221,001. Sometimes people are surprised at just how many cloud computing questions they get. It's a big section of the exam. What's interesting is there's a small number of exam objectives, but a relatively large number of the percentage of your exam, a lot larger than the other sections on the exam. So it's one of those situations where it is useful to know that technology because you're probably going to get asked more than one question about cloud computing. Make sure you are familiar with that technology and that big list of technologies. There's a lot of topics in the cloud computing section. It's small, but it's got a lot of detail in there. So make sure you're familiar with those. Let's see how you did with this question that asked, a system administrator would like to centrally manage all desktops in the cloud. Which of the following would fit this description? We have 63% of you that said VDI is the right answer, well above any of the other answers. 15% said cloud storage is what you would use. 11% said hybrid, and then a tie for fourth place with 5% apiece between metered and rapid elasticity. This is a technology that a lot of administrators are using because what if you were just able to manage all the systems out on a cloud-based system? You won't have to worry about finding somebody's computer at their desk, changing things on their individual computer. You simply change it in the virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, which is in the cloud. I'm showing an example of the VDI that's out on Amazon. This is the Amazon Workspaces, where I went out to Amazon and in less than a couple of minutes, I said, make me a Windows desktop, make it Windows 10, and let me download the client so I can effectively remote desktop into this VDI. And minutes later, I'm at this desktop. I had a fully running Windows system. So quick to be able to have that there. You can, of course, because this cloud desktop is somewhere else on a different computer, the client you're using can be on any operating system you'd like. You could be on a tablet computer. You could be on a smartphone. You could be on Linux. You could be on Mac OS. It doesn't matter what operating system is running in the cloud as long as there's a client there that allows you to access that operating system. It's effectively a remote desktop connection into that device that's out in the cloud. So all this communication is being sent over a network interface card. It is sending all kinds of information back and forth for that screen information. So all we really need is a basic computing device and a network connection, and we're able to connect to our desktop in the cloud. There's a lot of great security reasons to do this. There's a lot of great costs of management to be able to do this. And there may also be costs of desktops and computing devices. You could get less powerful computing devices for everyone's desk. All your money and all your effort is going into the VDI cloud-based system. So VDI, the virtual desktop infrastructure, was the right answer here. If you answered D, VDI, you got it absolutely right. Cloud storage is a way to store files in the cloud. Very commonly, if you're using Google Drive, if you're using Dropbox, if you're using Amazon's S3, then you're using a cloud storage feature. That is not a way to centrally manage desktops, however. Hybrid is a description of a cloud computing platform that allows us to have different types of deployments of cloud computing technologies. Hybrid technologies usually would be public and private, for example, would be hybrid technologies. And then same thing with metered and rapid elasticity. These are characteristics of cloud computing. Metered is one that describes how we are able to measure how much use we are having for these cloud-based systems. So if you use the cloud a lot, you pay a lot. If you use the cloud a little bit, you don't pay as much. which is a nice feature of cloud computing. And then rapid elasticity describes how quickly you can build out your infrastructure or shrink your infrastructure just by clicking a few buttons or even automatically having it occur. And the ability to do that quickly, to be able to expand or contract, that is rapid elasticity. The name sort of describes exactly what it is, isn't it? Very useful to have that there. In this case, where we're looking for that virtual desktop infrastructure, the VDI, if you answer D, you got that one absolutely correct. Here's a better shot of that workspaces, by the way. It's like magic. You get it running and you're up in there. By the way, to get that running, just make sure if you build this out on Amazon to try it out, you have to make sure that you power it down and then delete it, or they will charge you for that later. So that's another advantage of the cloud, is you're only paying for what you use. Just make sure that if you're trying this out yourself, that you don't forget it's there. You're going to get a bill at the end of the month, which probably won't be a huge bill, but it's one you still need to know about. So that's your VDI. Well, if you like these questions so far, some folks in the chat room were even talking about this. There are also questions that I have created for you. One of the things I found, and one of the things I tell you all the time, is that you need a good book to study, you need some good videos, you need plenty of hands-on, and then you need some Q&A. And that's the thing I think that I found when I was trying to find good Q&A, is there was not a lot of good Q&A out there. And so I wrote my own books for questions and answers. These are my Core 1 A+ practice exams, 370 pages. This is a PDF, or you can get a physical version of this. 90 questions in 3 separate exams. So it's as if you're sitting down and taking a full 90 question exam 3 times. Completely different questions, of course, in each one of these. I include both multiple choice and performance-based questions in this. And I provide you with some ways to get more feedback on these. I'll show you what I mean. This is the PDF that is the question exam for the practice exam for the 220-1001. So let's do one since we're doing questions. The very first one that's multiple choice asks, the printer in the accounting department has stopped all printing processes. The print queue shows that there are 7 jobs in the queue that are waiting to be printed. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be A, send the test job to the printer and move it to the top of the queue? Would it be B, restart the printer's spooler? Would it be C, install an updated version of the printer driver? Or would it be D, delete everything in the queue and resend the print jobs? Now, not only are the questions that I write here they have the same style, the same cadence, the same voice as questions you would get on the actual exam. So already that's a bonus. But because this is a PDF, you'd have to either go to page 31 or page 39 to see the answers for the details. Well, I put links right in the PDF. So all you have to do is click the details and it goes to page 39. There's your question and it tells you that the answer is B, restart the printer's spooler. And you can see in here that I tell you why I think the answer is B. I give you the explanation of why that is the right answer for this question. But whenever I take sample exams, especially sample exams online, I always get them wrong, and then it doesn't tell you why you got them wrong, which drives me crazy. So for every wrong answer, I have documented why every wrong answer is the wrong answer. So you will never, ever wonder again, why did I get that wrong? It seems like I got that one right. Well, I explained to you why in this particular case with this particular question and the things that were asked of you, this is why. So in fact, if you answer D, delete everything in the queue and resend the print jobs, I explained to you that if the spooler's having problems, then deleting the print jobs will only require users to resend the print requests again, which will then sit in the queue and they won't print. So you've got a reason behind doing this. I also put on this at the very bottom, there's a QR code and links inside of this that will take you to the video that gives you more information on the topic of this question. And there's QR codes, so if you've got the actual physical book with you, and you can do this right now, pop open your phone, turn on the camera. You don't have to take a picture of this, just put your camera up to the screen so it can read the QR code, and it will put a link there that you can go to that video right now to watch that video. Once you're done with this, we're obviously many pages into the PDF. We're 48 pages in, but if you use the back button on your browser, in fact, I have one right here at the top. We'll click the back button, and it takes you right back to where you started, and then you can go to the next question on the list. That is my practice exams. I'm very proud of that book. We spent a lot of time creating the book, making sure that the links would work right, making sure the content was right. Most importantly, there needs to be high quality practice exam, something that can really give you a good prep for the exam, and I believe this does it. If you want more information on that, you can find it at professormesser.com/core1pe. All right, enough of my talking. Let's do more questions. Got another one for you. The next question on our list asks, users have sent numerous jobs to a network laser printer, but there is no activity from the printer. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? We're going to see how many people were listening for just a moment there. Is the best next troubleshooting step to restart the printer, run a test print from the printer console, replace the toner cartridge, reinstall the printer drivers, or reboot the print server? So users have sent numerous jobs to a network laser printer, but there's no activity from the printer. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be to restart the printer, run a test print from the printer console, replace the toner cartridge, reinstall the printer drivers, or reboot the print server? You think you know the answer. You don't want to answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer there. It seems like it's a question that's similar to what we were just looking at, but it really isn't, is it? It's a little bit different. You will find this on the exam as well, is that there will be a question that comes up on the exam, and there will be multiple questions on similar topics, but they're all a little bit different. And this is a good example of that, of them being just a little bit different in the way that they're being worked through. Let's see if you can work through all of these and have that happen. This is one where printing is a big section of the exam. It's a part of the exam also that we find ourselves not really familiar with because a lot of us don't have laser printers. We don't have laser printers at home. We don't have inkjet printers. We don't maybe have any printers at home. So that's one of those examples of going through this and really understanding printer technology so that you can answer questions like this. So hopefully you're familiar with these as well. See if you can lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock it in. Let's see how you did with this one. Users have sent numerous jobs to a network laser printer, but there's no activity from the printer. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Is it restart the printer, run a test print from the printer console, replace the toner cartridge, reinstall the printer drivers, or reboot the print server? And we're all over the place on this one. 36% of us said restart the printer. 36% of us said reboot the print server. 22% said run a test print from the printer console. And then single digits, 3% said reinstall the printer drivers, and 2% said replace the toner cartridge. Now, this is one of those questions that some people in the chat room have even said this is a trick question, but it's not. It's a very specific question. It asks you what would be the best next troubleshooting step. And this is where you want to think about the troubleshooting process. The last thing you would ever think of doing, you walk up to a printer, it's not working. What do? You just bang on it? You hit it on the top? Hey, this printer's not working. Do you just unplug everything and plug it back in again? Do you power everything down and power it back up again? But you don't even know why it's performing this way to begin with. We've done no troubleshooting. We've done no analysis of the problem. We have no clue why it's not printing properly. The first thing we want to do is figure out why it is not printing properly. Is the printer broken? Is something wrong with the printer? And of all the different topics in here, of all the different choices you have, restarting the printer and rebooting the print server are not the best next troubleshooting step, even though that was our number one choice of those two. But restarting those and rebooting those, you're already changing the situation. You haven't even done any analysis of the problem yet. Well, that leaves us with three options, which is run a test print from the printer console, replace the toner cartridge, or reinstall the printer drivers. Well, we know that replacing the toner cartridge and reinstalling the printer drivers is, again, making a change to a system that we have no idea why it's not working to begin with. So the only option here that makes any sense whatsoever is you've now walked up to this problem. What is going on? Let's start doing some diagnostics. Let's figure out, troubleshoot why this is not printing. It could be that our printer is broken. It could be the printer itself is not working properly. One way to test the capabilities of the printer are to run a test print from the printer console, which means we've ruled out the network. We're not going to deal with the network right now. We're not going to deal with printer drivers. We're not going to deal with operating systems. We're simply going to see if the printer can give us a test print. And of all the choices available, that is the only one that would be the best next troubleshooting step to be able to make this happen. Now, again, that particular answer doesn't solve the problem, but that wasn't the question. The question was saying, we've now walked into this situation. What's the first thing you do? What is the next thing you do? And that's where you have to look at the list of all of these to figure out, as a good technician, as somebody who's trying to resolve this and trying to understand the problem, what would be the first thing we would do? Well, it's not to change anything. It's not to replace drivers. It's not to start rebooting everything willy-nilly. It's instead to go through all of this and run a test print from the printer console. That would be a great way to do that. We do have a list of these in the exam. There's a note. If there's no output on the printer, there's things we can check. Let's check. Are we getting messages? Is the printer working properly? Or is there a message on the display? Just simply walking up and rebooting the system isn't going to solve a problem. It'd be nice to get more information about what's going on. So that's what you should absolutely do, is figure out why this is not working properly. So absolutely, running a test print, a great thing to do. At that point, if that worked, we can now work backwards. Are we connected to the network? Are we able to have the printer seen from the network side? There's so many different steps we can go to that point to be able to work through these particular problems. And ultimately, you'll be at the application itself. So we sort of started the printer and worked our way back from the printer to the network to finally the operating system itself. Those are good ways. If you're not getting output from a printer, that is a good check to be able to find those and the way that they're happening. So if you get some of these questions on your exam, you will get questions that ask you, what would be the best next troubleshooting step? They're not asking you, how do you fix this? They're not asking you, what is the problem? They're asking you, how do you troubleshoot? So you do have to have some knowledge of the troubleshooting process, because very often making a change to a system is the last thing you would want to do. You've now destroyed whatever problem was there. It's just going to happen again. So it's much better if you go through and figure out those details on the printer. If you want more information on troubleshooting printers, that comes from my 221001, section 5.6 on troubleshooting printers. And I have QR codes on all of these pages, so you can simply click that and go directly to the video yourself to be able to make that happen. Let's do another question. Enough printing. Let's do a different kind of question. No more printing. We've had 2 printer questions in a row. So let's do a question that asks, which of the following would best describe the unique identifier associated with a mobile device? Would that be a PRL, a PIN, a WPA2, an IMEI, or an IP? Which of the following would best describe the unique identifier associated with a mobile device? Is it PRL, PIN, WPA2, IMEI, or IP? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please note answers in the chat room. We're going to go through this list and figure it out as if we are in the exam. We are going through the questions, trying to figure out all the details on those questions. You're going to be able to figure this one out too, I think, to be able to make all of those happen. See if you can go through and figure out what this one happens to be. You at least have 5 choices. Maybe some of these choices you know what they are. Maybe some of these choices you don't know what they are. But you should be able to step through each one of those and being able to make that happen. Which of the following would best describe the unique identifier associated with a mobile device? So that's one where if you're ever working through and trying to figure out the details of this, this is one of those where you absolutely need to know this technology. This is one might be familiar to you. See how you do with that and being able to make it happen. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in that answer. Let's see how you did. Which of the following would best describe the unique identifier associated with the mobile device? Is it PRL, a PIN, WPA2, IMEI, or IP? 93% of you say it's IMEI, and then single digits for everything else. 3% said it's a PIN, 3% said it's IP, 1% said PRL, and 1% said WPA2. Now, if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to figure out where do you go with these questions, you need to at least understand what these technologies are and where they would fit. And if you've ever bought a phone, you've got a tablet that's connected to a cellular network, you've got lots of options there. They're always going to ask you, maybe even over the phone, for your IMEI, your International Mobile Station Equipment Identity. The IMEI is the one that is a unique identifier. It is one that is not duplicated on any other phone wherever you happen to be. So if you look at the IMEI of your mobile phone that you're using right now, it's a unique value. Nobody else has that IMEI. So they can look at that physical device and know that that physical device is unique. It is one that makes a lot of sense to be able to have that there. There's another set of technologies that you might work through. For instance, these other technologies that are here, like a PRL, the preferred roaming list. That's another one that you might get on a mobile device. But that's something that is downloaded or occasionally updated in your mobile device that helps your device understand where it can find different places to roam to, different antennas that it can use when it's roaming. So another nice capability to be able to find some type of data access if you happen to be outside of your normal area with the PRL. A PIN is a personal identification number. It has nothing to do with your mobile device being unique. There could be many different PINs, and the PIN that you have set up for a login or authentication can be used by a different device as well, so there's no uniqueness with that. WPA2 is a type of wireless encryption, so that's not what we were looking for. And lastly, IP, an IP device. The Internet Protocol is not a unique identifier for a mobile device either. Your best choice here is IMEI. 93% of you already knew that. IMEI was the right answer to be able to have that one there. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, then, and if you don't know what that is, then this doesn't apply to you. But those that are collecting these CEUs, I will send you an email that is digitally signed by me that grants you 1 hour of a webinar category CEU just for watching this event. But you have to follow these instructions to be able to get the email. You want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link on both the top and the bottom of the site. That will bring up a form. Make sure in that form you put your name, you put your email address. You have to put it twice so that I can send it back to the right email address. There's a subject line. In that subject line, if you would put this is the October Core 1 study group. And in the body of the message itself, if you would put the super secret code word of the month on a line all by itself, and that code word of the month is PRL. That is the super secret code word of the month. Kind of mixed it up there just a little bit. You can also put anything else you would like in the rest of the body of the message if you would like. I read through all of these. So if you want to send me a message, I'm not able to respond back to all of those, but I do like to read through everything that you send. That is what you would do. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put that this is the October Core 1 study group, put the super secret code word of PRL. Takes me about a week to turn these around and get them back to you. I usually do them on the weekend, so you're not going to get a response back in 5 minutes. This is going to take a little bit of time for me to sit down and go through the hundreds of them to be able to make that happen. So this one, whenever I work that, that's certainly the case where I would be able to work through all of those pieces. So that's what you can do as well. It's a great way to work through that, be able to have that happen. Let's do another question. I've got one for you. Someone was asking about a network administrator's job. Well, here is a question that a network administrator would have to work through. The question asks, a network administrator is concerned that the Ethernet interface on a router may be faulty. Which of the following tools would be the best way to troubleshoot this issue? Would it be a punch-down tool? Would it be a loopback plug? Would it be a tone generator? Would it be a cable tester? Would it be a multimeter? A network administrator is concerned that the Ethernet interface on a router may be faulty. Which of the following tools would be the best way to troubleshoot this issue? Would it be a punch-down tool, a loopback plug, a tone generator, a cable tester, or a multimeter? all 5 things that a good network administrator should have in their tool bag to be able to make that happen. So see if you can figure out of that list which of those 5 things would be the best way to troubleshoot this issue. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer there. Please no questions in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. It's a great way to do it, figuring out those pieces. There's a few ways you could go with this one, but the question is not asking you which of these could you use. The question is asking you which of the following tools would be the best way to troubleshoot this issue. Figure out those. So you'll get that a lot on the exam. You'll get a situation where they will ask you a question, but as you're reading through the answers, you're thinking, well, I could use more than one of these to solve this problem. Well, that wasn't the question. The question was, which of these would be the best way to solve this problem? And that is something you'll run into constantly on the exam, is they want the best answer. What is the most applicable way? What is the next best thing to do? So that's a good example of a question here where I could possibly use more than one thing here to be able to solve this problem, but that wasn't what they asked for. They want to know the best way to solve this problem. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a network administrator is concerned that the Ethernet interface on a router may be faulty. Which of the following tools would be the best way to troubleshoot this issue? Would it be a punch-down tool, a loopback plug, a tone generator, a cable tester, or a multimeter? Let's see how we did. 59%, just over half, said loopback plug is what you would use for this one. But we have double digits. 19% said a cable tester, 11% said a tone generator, 12% said a multimeter, and then less than 1% said a punch-down tool. So already we're just not using a punch-down tool. Same thing as the thing that you perhaps went through and was able to send. So on both of those situations, that would be a situation where absolutely going through all of this is the case where the loopback plug would be the right one. So if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to figure out how to see if they match, and the best way to do that is with a loopback plug. There's different kinds of loopback plugs for different types of connections, serial connections, network connections, for Ethernet, for fiber, for T1. These are connections that allow us to send information out and send information back. So whenever you work through that, you'll notice that the pinouts are not the same as a crossover cable. This is not crossover cable connectivity. This is a problem with or a way to wire so that the output is circling back into the input and making all of those things happen. Poor folks in the chat room, you notice that things were a little bit back and forth on you. We did not lose signal here, however. I was able to see all of your chat messages saying you were not able to see this, but unfortunately, the problem is not on my side. The problem is on the YouTube side, which does occasionally happen, but you're back now. So thanks for being back now and having all of those things happen. Don't you hate it when you're stuck right in the middle? You don't know really what was going on there. That's one of those situations. So if you chose loopback plug, that was the right answer. 58% of you chose that. Let's look at these other answers, though. 19% of you said a cable tester, which is great for testing if a cable is wired properly, but it doesn't tell you anything about the interface on a router. Cable testers don't give you any feedback on if an interface, a piece of hardware on a device, is working properly. So that's one of those situations where you do have a problem with that. 12% of you said multimeter. Multimeters are great for measuring signal or even voltage over a particular wire, but a multimeter is not going to tell you if an interface on a router might be faulty. That doesn't help us either. Tone generator, very useful for putting a tone onto a wire that we can then use an inductive probe to find where the other end of the wire happens to be. It's a fox hunt. It's being able to find the other end of that wire. That's when you would use a tone generator. Tone generator won't help you troubleshoot any type of physical problems with a router interface. And then lastly, punch-down tool. Not many people thought punch-down tool would be it, but 1% of you said a punch-down tool. That is for making sure that wires are firmly connected to a punch-down block. That's not going to help you whenever you're trying to figure out whether a router interface might be faulty. The best answer, and the one everyone chose, would be the loopback plug. 58% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. So now that we are back, you're able to see the different connections that we have here. We're able to get more of this through. Let's see if we can get another question in before we run out of time for today. I have another question. And this question asks, which of the following characteristics would be most important for a thin client? Which of the following characteristics would be most important for a thin client? Would that be a network connection? Would it be available storage space? Would it be a high quality audio output? Would it be a fast processor? Or would it be video memory? Those are the 5 things we need to break down. Which of the following characteristics would be most important for a thin client? Is that a network connection, available storage space, high quality audio output, a fast processor, or a video memory? Those are the 5 things. Lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA. Lock it in. See if you happen to know which one of those would be most important for a thin client. This is one of those also, by the way, if you're ever working through these problems and maybe you're not familiar with some of the technology they're talking about, maybe you don't know exactly what some of the answers are, these are the cases where you can start parsing out the questions and the answers. Take the things you do know, maybe you can put that to the side, and then you can narrow your focus. Being able to answer 1 of 4, if you can get rid of one of those, it turns it into 1 of 3. And on your answer, on your exam, you should be trying to answer every question. Never leave any of the answers blank or empty before you submit that exam, because you take a guess. It doesn't harm you. You don't get penalized for guessing. You don't get penalized for getting a question wrong. You just don't get any points. Well, that means you could guess on every single one of these. And you might get one right just by happenstance, just by randomness, and being able to make that happen. So make sure you answer every single question on the exam before you submit those questions. It's going to be very, very important to you to be able to make that happen. Let's see how you did with the thin client question. Which of the following characteristics would be most important for a thin client? Is it a network connection, available storage space, high quality audio output, fast processor, or video memory? How did we do? 77% say it's the network connection that would be the most important. You've got 8% or 12% of you said fast processor would be most important. 8% said available storage space, and then a tie for 4th place between a high quality audio output and a video memory. Both of those only getting 2% apiece. Well, first let's talk about a thin client. Here's a thin client. There's a picture of one. This is a very thin client. It's a very small device. It's a client. It's a device that you would have where the user is. This is what they are using to perform whatever functions they need to do their job. That device, because we call it a thin client, has a minimum amount of resources on it. So you can even see here, it's a very small device, probably not a high-powered processor inside of that. You certainly don't have a full-size graphics card inside of it. It's the basics of basic. So it has, you can plug in a keyboard, you can plug in a mouse, and it just does enough to be able to connect over a remote desktop type connection to be able to perhaps connect to a VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, just like we talked about before. So we would set up their desktop in the cloud. We'd simply give them this tiny little device. We tell them plug in your monitor, plug in a mouse, plug in a keyboard, hit the power button. It's automatically going to connect to your cloud-based desktop, and you'll be able to use that. So there's a minimum capability operating system on this thin client. It doesn't have a ton of memory, doesn't have a ton of CPU. It's not made to have a ton of memory or a ton of CPU. That's when you run into situations with all of these that it does help if you walk through these and figuring out the details, which one of these is going to be the right thing. But because everything for this thin client takes place across the network, you need to be absolutely sure that you're able to communicate well on that network connection. So much more important than a CPU, much more important than the video card or the audio you have in the system is the ability to be able to communicate out to the virtual desktop infrastructure that happens to be in the cloud. So that is the most important thing in my mind of all of these choices. I can do with minimum amount of storage space. I don't need high quality audio output. I don't need the fastest processor in the world. I certainly don't need a lot of video memory, but the network connection is so important on these devices to be able to connect to that and be able to work through all of those. If you are ever in a situation with this where you're trying to figure it out and figure out why you would be able or need to be able to break through some of these, that's what I do as well. I just break each one of them down to figure out those details, and that might help you with your studies as well. That is the right answer. If you answered A, network connection, that is the most important of all of these for a thin client. None of these others, like storage space, audio output, a processor, video memory, are all secondary to the network connectivity. So it's important when you're going through this and you're trying to figure out which one of these is going to be the most important. Make sure you're able to put them in that list of most important to least important to be able to have that there. It'd be pretty important to have that and to be able to work through it. One nice thing about these thin clients, they barely need a CPU to be able to operate. So very, very useful to have that functionality there. Hopefully that gave you some perspective on these as well. When you start going through all the questions on the exam, you can see there's a lot of different styles. There's a lot of different formats on the exam. There's a lot of different topics. And if you are someone who is trying to figure out what you need to know for the exam, when you would go and take the exam, make sure you get the exam objectives. You can find them at professormesser.com/objectives. You can download them. They're absolutely free. They should be your checklist that you use before you go in and take the exam. They should be the checklist you start with when you start your studies. So if you have not taken this exam and looked at all of the details inside of the exam objectives, make sure you do that. Incredibly important to have that there. Well, of course, this study group is available for replay immediately afterwards. There's also years worth of study groups available that you can go back and watch all of those replays. There's an index on the Professor Messer website, and there is a playlist available on my YouTube channel as well. But we do one of these every month. In fact, we do another one for the Core 2 exam in 2 days on October the 8th. And then we've got 2 more scheduled for November 3rd and November 5th. If you're watching this and it's well after November the 5th, you can always find out when the next events are going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar. You can see when our Core 1 study group is, our Core 2 study group, our Network Plus study group, and our Security Plus study group. It's all there to be able to know exactly when these are going to happen live. And we'd love to have you here in the chat room and be able to have that happen live. We still aren't done, although we've gone through an hour of Q&A where I've asked you the questions. Now we have the after show where we turn this around and you ask me the questions. We'll do that in just a moment. Stick around for that. Don't forget about my course notes and practice exams. You can find that at professormesser.com/1001success. And of course, we got a bunch of free stuff. Twitter's out there, professormesser.com/Twitter, our daily pop quiz question. I put the same daily pop quiz question on Instagram. So if you're an Instagrammer, you just like a pretty picture along with your question of the day. That's at professormesser.com/Instagram. And of course, all the free videos are out there on YouTube. Feel free to stop by and have a look at those as well. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here. We'd love to have you here, and stick around for the after show. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Well, let's see if I can get the after show going. We'll talk about the name of the song I play at the beginning and end of the podcast. Yeah, we don't have the song when we're live, do we? That is all added later. If you will bear with me a moment, I'm going to get the phone lines up and running, and then I'll tell you how you can join us on those phone lines. All of the phone lines and the call-in that I do is in the cloud. It's all in the cloud these days, isn't it? So I need to call in on my side to my cloud-based system. So if you'll bear with me just a moment, there's nobody here but me to be able to make this happen. So you're going to follow along with me as I am calling in. It's going to make some noises on this side where it says, let's see if it...
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome. I'm so glad I was able to do that. But now I have to type in my show number. So we're going to type that in. There we go. And hashtag.
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
I will absolutely do that, nice lady. I'll put in my 6-digit PIN, and she says...
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Why, thank you, nice lady. What a nice thing to say, which was welcome. Well, that means that you can join us in the after show. We've got a phone line that you can call in anywhere in the continental United States. It's a toll-free number, costs you nothing, at 855-785-7545. West of the Rockies, 855-785-RJ45. You can also call in for free anywhere in the world using Skype, because it is a toll-free number. No Skype minutes are required. You simply put a +1 at the beginning of this. There's your +1 on the screen right there. It's right there. +1, 855-785-7545. The phone lines are all chockers at the moment, but we will get through them in just a moment. And whenever somebody hangs up, you'll know that there's another one there and available for you. I'll have to figure out what the name is of that song that is in the in fact, I have it here somewhere for the podcast. For those of you that don't know, there's a podcast-only version of this that's available afterwards at professormesser.com/podcast. And I put a music bumper on the beginning and end of that to be able to at least have a little bit of music there, because they won't take down my podcast. They only take down videos that have music on them. So that's one of those situations. I'll find that as we're going through this, and I'll mention what that happens to be. Is the chair Herman Miller? No, this chair is a Office Depot. Office Depot. Very exotic. In fact, it's difficult to find these days. I guess it was one they tried to make. It's a Herman Miller at a fifth of the price. Barely holding together. It's held together pretty well so far. I'm expecting any moment for the hydraulics to go out and the whole thing goes down, and then I will have to buy an actual real chair. In the meantime, we're just rolling with it, with whatever I happen to have. I've used it for so long, I can't bear to get rid of it at this point. And it fits very well. It's perfect size. It's perfect height. Doesn't get in the way. So it's one of those situations. To be able to figure that, oh, your wife is playing the How Old is Professor Messer game. Well, that will be I can't settle it. No, it's a mystery. Even I don't know. I was found on the street wandering around we don't know if I was 2 years old or 12. It's one of those situations. We'll have to figure out what that happens to be. In the meantime, we will go to the phones and figure out. We'll get the phone lines up and running here so that we can hear them. I have to push a few of these to make that happen. Let's go to our first caller. It's the anonymous caller. Hi, caller. Are you there? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, how you doing? It's Sam from the UK. I told you probably last month.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you? Welcome back.
I just thought I'd call up and let you know that I've finally passed my Core 1 and 2. I've passed the Core 2 today, so I'm thrilled.
Fantastic. You passed the Core 2 today. That's how fresh it is. So congratulations on your A+. That's fantastic. Yeah. Is there a particular tip? We obviously can't tell people specifics from the exam, but now that you've gone through both of these in a relatively short period of time, are there some tips that you could tell others who might be listening who are planning to go through this whole thing, and let us know whether you did it online or whether you went to an actual testing center?
I've done this online, but I guess the process was just to watch all your videos, binge it at the start, and then I went through a company called P Labs was it Practice Labs, and done like some practice questions there.
Great.
They're very specific and a lot more detailed than what you would do on the actual exam, but they're very helpful to do it, and it helps you learn some questions as well. And I think I also bought a book off Amazon. Not sure what it was, but there's like loads of books you can buy on there as well to binge all the questions. I just smashed lots of questions.
For some reason, I think that is what helps me the most, is actually going through and doing as many questions as possible. Kind of gets me thinking about the topics, figuring out which things I should be studying, and sometimes tripping me up so I know which things I really needed to work on a little bit better. Well, congratulations. So now that you've got the A+ in your list of things, is this working towards a particular goal, or is this the stepping stone towards the next certification?
Well, I'm with this recruitment agency. They wanted me to get this qualification first, and then they're going to help me find some work. So after passing university last year, I think in May, it's been a very, very long time since I've actually been able to work. And I'm hoping this is the start.
I think that's a great start too. If nothing else, I think going through the certification process and learning the information that's part of the certification whether somebody understands the certification or not, I think we come out of it smarter on the other side. I think we come out of it with more knowledge than we had when we went into it, which helps you throughout your career, whether your employer knows you got the certification or not. I think you're a more valuable person, a more valuable employee because of it. So hopefully that will work out the same for you. Maybe this will open the doors that you need to be able to get those.
Yeah, I really hope so. So I'm looking forward to what kind of work I'll be put into. And like we said last time, we'll see how long I stay on help desk.
That's one of those situations. Just soak in as much as you can in the meantime. Start honing your skills. Find the niche that you like the most. Drill down into that niche. And I'm telling you, as someone who's been there, the doors will start to open. It's remarkable how well it goes once things get going, Sam.
All right, thank you very much. I guess it's time to celebrate. I'll have a couple of drinks, and then I'll start with recruitment.
It never ends. You got to take a breath, and we're off to the next one. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call. Keep us apprised of how things go. I can't wait to hear what happens next with these. It's an interesting story of where things go and how things work with this. Sam was mentioning the practice labs. If you go to the Professor Messer website under the A+ training menus, there's an A+ study recommendations option that is in the menus. Those A+ study resources, of course, include my course notes, but I also put a list of books in here that I like, and I put the practice labs right here, Resource 3, plenty of hands-on. Those are the practice labs. Those are my folks I know. I've worked with them for years over on the practice lab side. They have a fantastic product, tons of hands-on labs. It's all in the cloud. All you need is a browser. A lot of great capabilities there. You'll find that on the Professor Messer website under the Core 1A+ training, under A+ study recommendations. I have another page for Network Plus study recommendations and Security Plus study recommendations as well. The practice labs, they have free practice labs out there too. So use that link, go out and get some of those free labs that they have. Try it out yourself. See if it's something that makes sense for you. It might be. And you'll be able to work through those as well. Maybe something that will work for you. We're always trying to find good hands-on, aren't we? And so I like their hands-on. I think that's a good place to go to be able to find that. Let's go back to the phones. We'll go to the 646 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Chris Bernard. How's it going? Calling from New York.
Oh, thanks for calling, Chris.
I had a question, more of advice. A quick background. I started working in desktop support analyst. I'm a desktop support analyst for about a year now. I've been studying for the A+ Core 1. I did Google support. I got that certificate. But I failed the Core 1 my second time last week. I just don't understand what am I not getting? Because, I see it a lot on the support side at work. I used to work with printers as a manager of a print center. So troubleshooting is what we did for printers. And paying for it, failing both times. I'm thinking about maybe moving on to my Core 2 because I do that primarily at work and then come back around for Core 1. But I'm just kind of like at an impasse. I watched all your videos. I've been doing the study group, been acing the study group on YouTube, bought the test prep from Udemy. I'm getting 80 consistently, over 80, and I just don't know what's going on. I've been getting my first test was 608, and my second test was around 615. And so, yeah, I'm just stuck at this impasse.
Well, there's a couple of ways to approach this, and you are right that I think the Core 1 exam and the Core 2 exam, although I find them to be, from a difficulty perspective, the same difficulty level, the topics on the two exams are very different. And if you're someone who's been working with operating systems and Windows and you're very familiar with troubleshooting on the operating system desktop side, you're probably going to do very well in the Core 2. So maybe shifting gears and shifting your brain over to that piece and concentrating on it might be a good respite over dealing with the Core 1 content, which may not be top of mind. If somebody's a desktop administrator and needing to troubleshoot desktops, you're probably not working a lot with types of memory and motherboard configuration. So that's not a bad strategy. It's not something that would be a horrible idea. And I think you might want to consider that. The one thing you want to be sure that you have access to, and this is now all online, is after you finish an exam, you can log into CompTIA's website. I guess it's really Pearson VUE's website that you log into, and you can look at the results from your exam. These exam results are full of information. They won't tell you the exact question and the exact answers that you chose, but they will tell you which topics you got wrong on the exam. So this is great intel if you have to take an exam again, because you may find that you did great on domain 1, you did great on domain 2, but suddenly you find that 15 questions you got wrong on domain 3, and it tells you which sections of domain 3 you got wrong. So you can at least try to do a little bit summarization of what topics you may have struggled with as you go through the exam. It may be able to bring out and show you, well, here's some things you need to work on for next time. Or it may show that you're just all over the place, which means it's a much broader study that you would have to work through. But now that you've taken it twice, you may find that there may be some duplicates between those two. So you might be able to correlate particular topics. You may find that cloud keeps coming up, and that's what you're struggling with, or hardware keeps coming up, or networking is where you really could spend some time and really make some more points. You're not far off. You need a 675 to be able to pass that exam. You're in the 600 range. It's a small tweak you're going to have to make to be able to move to that next level and get enough to pass. So you're almost there. I think maybe at this point it's doing a little bit of intel, a little bit of recon of what you've already done. Maybe put it into a spreadsheet, maybe calculate it out and see which ones are there. That is where you will find it in those exam results on the Pearson VUE website. So that's where I would recommend you go as well. Did you have a chance to look at those result pages?
Yeah, they print it out after you finish your test. They always give you a printout on what exactly you failed and the points where you should focus on. And that's the funny part. Section 5, troubleshooting printers. You went over it today, and again, I manage a print center, so
right.
It's hilarious that I couldn't get that.
This is one of these challenges on this exam, because like the question I asked today, where things aren't printing, so what do you do? Well, if you work in a print center, you probably just reboot the printer and you keep it moving. But that wasn't the question. The question was, what's the best next troubleshooting step for solving this problem, which is in some cases very different than what we tend to think of doing to be able to solve the problem. So I think that's another thing that might be useful if you have a chance to get some practice exams that best emulate the exam experience. That might help you as well. Sometimes it's not what you know, it's how they ask the question. And they do ask the question in a way that a lot of people aren't expecting. It's a very weird type of method that they use to ask some of these questions. So there's good questions. I, of course, have practice exams, but there's a lot of good places you can go to get practice exams on these. So maybe it's just a little more Q&A. And I think if you worked a little more on that, it probably puts you over the top.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I bought your Q&A. I bought your practice exam. I got a lot of stuff from you. I'm going to just review everything I got to. I was just kind of lost, and I was frustrated because I'm in the industry, and it's like, I feel like I should be getting this, but you're right. I'll review all this, and I think I'll do the Core 2 since I've already purchased it. It was on sale for Earth Day, and I want to take that before it expires next year. I'll come back around for Core 1 before 2022 and then see if I can just nail it.
I think that's a good move. Let it soak in a little bit. By the time you come back to it, it's probably going to be all in your brain and ready to go.
Man, love the study group. Love all the content that you put out there, and you're definitely right with the first caller. Going through this class and everything, I've gotten smarter and better at work. So thanks a lot.
Best of luck, Chris. Keep us informed. Let us know how it goes.
Yep.
Thanks for calling. That's challenging and it's frustrating. It reminds me of taking a certification exam when I was a systems engineer for a protocol analyzer company. So we were grabbing packets off of the network. I was a network guy. I was a network administrator. From there, I worked at this company. And I was the systems engineer for this network analysis tool, a very complex network analysis tool. And I was taking an exam on network cabling. There used to be a certification exam for network cabling called the CNX, the Certified Network Expert. This goes back a few years. And I took the first certified cabling exam and I failed it. I thought, how am I failing an exam on cabling and fiber? I've been working with cabling and fiber forever. I can certainly pass. This doesn't make sense to me. So I tried to grab as many cabling and fiber resources as I could. This was before there was an internet. And found some books and some cabling materials, and I found as much as I could. And I put them in a pile, and I read through all of them. Went back and took the cabling exam again and failed it again. Just failed it. I could not believe what is going on. I don't understand. During my day job, I do the detail list of packet decodes and understanding network analysis, application baselining, application throughput analysis. It was killing me. So I was at least able to get the summary of what I did wrong. Third time went back and finally passed it on the third time through. And that's why I'm here today, because I would have thrown myself off a cliff had I not passed that exam finally. So that is kind of the moral of the story is, it doesn't matter what you do during the day. These exams can throw you. And some of the content is very different than some of the things we deal with during the day. But as they often say, you don't fail until you stop. So as long as you keep going and keep taking it and keep trying and keep going, you will eventually get over that hump. You'll eventually pass this exam. It's just annoying to have to pay the money, to have to make sure that you get time to do it, that you're studying and spending all the effort, but eventually you do pass it. And I was going to pass that exam really no matter what it took. So I empathize with Chris in many ways because I have been there. It's just frustrating when you're in it. After you're out of it, you pass the exam, you're like, okay, what's next? Suddenly it all falls away. But when you're stuck in the middle of it, you're just mired and you're angry and you hate everyone. And now they're mad at this exam and who wrote this exam and they don't know what they're doing. Oh, I passed it? Okay, very good. What's next? What should we do next? What should we do next is go to caller 845. Hi, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm calling from Florida. I actually talked to you last month, too.
You do? I have you in my call notes right here. Matt, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah. I failed. I had my examination. I got a 650.
What are these calls we keep getting? And so close to 650.
Yeah, it was really heartbreaking. But, I think my real question I would want to know, it's a general IT question, all right? I just want to say, so I can get peace. Because I feel like that when they give you the sections that you got wrong, I have a pretty vivid memory, so I still remember what most of the questions were,
right.
And I can see 4 or 5 that could have applied to one of those sections.
Right.
And so I don't know which one I got. But so just a general question here. Would I want to put a more powerful CPU in a gaming PC or one that is supposed to run virtualization?
I guess if we go with what the gamers will tell us, and I think probably as well, you tell me which one you chose after I tell you. So the one I would choose on the exam, if given that speculation, I got a gaming computer, I got a virtualization device, which one needs more CPU power? Generally speaking, knowing nothing more about anything on here, generally speaking, I'd say the virtualization device is the one that I would choose that would need the most CPU because it very often does.
It's running more than one operating system.
It's running more than one operating system. We're just assuming because we're running more than one operating system that you're going to have lots of CPU. Something's going on. Is it a database server? Is it a web server? Is it running a separate OS? It's running twice as many operating systems as when it's not, at least. And if we load up more virtualization systems on there, you could be running 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 desktops at the same time. So certainly CPU is a critical piece of this. Gamers will tell you that a lot of the gaming is happening on the video side. It's in the video card. That's where
the GPU.
The GPU is where all the action's taking place. There's some CPU requirement. In fact, in practical use, the CPU in a lot of games is used a lot with this. Is not just GPU. But if you've got a very generic question like that, here's your 2 situations: gaming, virtualization, which one sucks more CPU? I would say more times than not, the virtualization device. That's the one I would choose. Right or wrong, that's what I'm going with.
Okay. I mean, I'm fairly certain that means I got that one correct.
Okay.
And I won't go into any more detail than that. But yeah, I just wanted to have confirmation that was the first thing that came into my head to think, because I had that thought come into my head as a gamer. I was like, do I need a really high CPU? I'm pretty sure it's only graphics, but I just wanted to make sure, you know.
This is the problem. You get these questions when you come out of these exams. You're double checking yourself. Was that really the right answer? Did I not do that one right? It's the same thing I went through on that cabling exam I went through, trying to figure out, am I double checking my brain with what I really do need to know? Right. Have I thought the wrong thing this whole time in my entire life? There's a whole tunnel you go down. You're in a hole. So you just have to pull yourself out of the hole. I'd go with the virtualization. Some folks in the chat room are saying the same thing. So maybe we can now adjust our efforts and figure out where that next step is. And like the last caller, you're very close to hitting the passing point, the passing grade. So it shouldn't take much.
I did do what you said, where you like look over what is showing up the most, and for me it's troubleshooting. So I know what sections I'm going over. So got
it. Well, at least we know where to start. Well, that's the next step, and just keep doing it until you pass it.
Thank you very much. I love all your content.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate the call. Best of luck.
Yeah.
That's challenging, frustrating, making that happen, but so close. It wasn't like you got a 300, you got a 650, 675 on the Core 1's passing. You're just so close. It's almost worse when it's that way. It's sort of like if you need, if you win the lottery by picking 6 numbers, you win like 50 million. If you pick 5 numbers, you get $1 million. I'd be angry if I got 5 numbers. But you're that close. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be angry if I got 5 numbers, but you understand what I'm saying. Back to the phone lines, 201 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello. Professor Messer. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
Hey, I have a quick question. I'm a first-time caller, but I have seen every single one of your videos for Core 1.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask a quick question. I know you're busy. I'll keep it really choppy and simple.
This is what I'm doing.
Can you quickly or give me an example for each of the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service? I feel like those are the things I'm struggling with most.
Those are good things to struggle with. We just talked about this in the last study group. It was the Security Plus study group. And those 3 things and where people are struggling with this. And I was able to bring up, as I mentioned earlier in the pre-show, if you happen to be here, we talked a little bit about the new Security Plus exam, where it goes into, there's a lot more cloud-based things in the new Security Plus exam. And I brought up a new document. It's not a new document. It's one that I guess the whole industry, we tend to use the same video, the same visual for cloud models. It's one that's been repeated forever. So I figure, well, if we're repeating the same thing everywhere else, I'm going to repeat on my slides as well. So let's look at cloud models. And I've got a slide. So if you're not watching, you'll have to come back and look at this later. But there is kind of a breakdown of running your own on-premises device, running infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And what it does is break down a single computing device into all of its little pieces. So starting at the top, the application is running on that service. There's data for the application. There's a runtime piece that allows you to run that application. There's middleware, which then talks to the operating system. There's, in this particular case of these cloud systems, virtualization. There's servers, storage, and networking under that. So everything that is blue on this list are things that the servers and the virtualization piece. And then it's my responsibility to load the operating system, the middleware, the runtime pieces, or the application itself. And then the data and actually use the application is all what I would take care of. So infrastructure as a service, they're just giving you the bones of a system. And then it's up to you to add everything else, starting with the operating system and all the way up. Software as a service is the exact opposite, where everything is managed by the provider. They not only manage the storage and the networking and the virtualization, they set up the operating system, they run the middleware, they set up the application runtime, they handle the data, and they handle the application working. The entire stack is handled by the provider for software as a service. It's the middle point that I think people get caught up on, which is the platform as a service, where the provider's managing a huge chunk of it, from the networking all the way up to the runtime piece. So they're giving you the platform. They're giving you the thing for the application to run on, but you have to build the app. You have to program the app. So platform as a service, they're usually developers you bring in. You tell the developers, I've got everything we need to run this app except the app itself. Please write an app for me that we can run on this platform as a service. And they create the application and the data, and then you just provide the app, you provide the data, and you run it on platform as a service. So that's how I would separate out all of those cloud models and break them down. And I think that's a good measurement. If you ever had to look on the exam or they ask you questions about those three models, I think that's a pretty good delineation between those three.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Professor Messer. That really helps so much. The last thing I'll say, you're the GOAT. You're the best. Thank you so much. Better than all the instructors at my school. And just keep doing what you're doing. And I have a test tomorrow, and I'm going to do my best, and we'll see what happens.
I think you're ready. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. All right.
You too. And I appreciate the kind words. That's very nice. I think one of the things, whenever you start getting into it and trying to figure out the details of this, is there's nuances to be able to find all of those things. And I think that that the nuances for cloud computing aren't quite as big as we think they are. There's just minor tweaks between them, and hopefully that's given you some perspective on that. Back to the phones. Let's go. Thanks for holding for so long. 620 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor. My name's Kelby, and I'm calling out of Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, thanks for calling, Kelby. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I actually took the Core 2 yesterday, and now I'm A+ certified, and fantastic. I have you to thank for that, really.
I did the easy part. You had to take the exam. Congratulations.
Thank you. I did buy your course notes to support your work because you do such a good job.
I appreciate it.
I do have a question, though. I am interested in taking the Network Plus next. I saw it came out in March 2018. Do you think I have enough time to study for that, or should I wait till it retires?
I think you have plenty of time. One thing I noticed, I got a notification of this in an invite that the folks sent to me from CompTIA, was that they were going through some of the Network Plus information, and what they said in that email was that the new Network Plus, so I'm assuming that would be the, N10008, I'm guessing, if they just keep sequentially using the same thing. The N10008 is going to be released in the end or the second half of 2021. So if you look at the next version will be out a year from now, if you want to look at it that way. But of course, there is an overlap period when they release a new version. They have generally 6 months or so before the old one retires. So if I had to guess, I would say the old or the existing Network Plus exam will probably retire at the beginning of 2022, which I think gives us plenty of time. If you were planning to take the Network Plus, the whole COVID thing has kind of pushed things out a bit. So you got plenty of time to study with the N10007 materials, and you're not going to have any problem at all meeting that time frame.
Okay. I appreciate the answer.
Absolutely. And best of luck with that. I think that's a good exam, a good certification to have. I think it's a good jumping off point for other things that you might want to do in IT. And it's a good one to follow up since you just got your A+. Congratulations. It's a good next step, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, from listening to all your past videos and study groups, I know that you really recommend to have a strong foundation in networking. So that's what I wanted to do with Network Plus and possibly CCNA. And then that should give me a good foundation for security if I want to pursue that later.
It absolutely would, and that's a good path to take as well. Best of luck.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate the call. That I think I can't say it enough, and Kelby was right that I say constantly that if you want to get into security or really do anything in IT, it's about the network. Everything happens on the network. Everything in IT has some component of that interacts with the network side. But especially if you want to get into security, a huge foundation of security has a basis in networking. That would be a good place to go. Absolutely. Let's go to Ed in Boca. There he is at 561. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Professor Messer. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for calling.
I currently have the Security Plus certification, and I'm guessing I'm working backwards now because I'm studying for the A Plus now.
Okay.
And so I have a question for you. Then I have a couple of the things that I'd want you to, items that I've read about, and I would like you to talk a little bit about, if you could. Anyway, the first question I have is, if I get A Plus certified, does that automatically renew my certification for Security Plus?
It gives you exactly 0 CEUs towards renewing your Security Plus. So it doesn't give you anything. The only way it would give you credit is if you went the other direction. If you already had your A Plus, if you then earned a Network Plus, or you then earned a Security Plus, that would renew the A Plus, but it doesn't work in the other direction, unfortunately.
Oh, so if I pass the A Plus exam, my Security Plus can expire?
And nothing changes with the expiration date of your Security Plus certification.
Okay. And the items that I have read that I'd like you to talk about is, one is something called the System Crystal, which I find kind of amazing because apparently it regulates the clock speed. And the other one is something called Ethernet over Power.
Yes.
Using a bridge.
Yes. Both things handled or covered in the A Plus exam. And let's start with the crystal, because the crystal is kind of an interesting, I don't want to call it technology, it's sort of an interesting piece of nature. A crystal is in the use of a computer, is a central timing mechanism for the entire system. And you'll find crystals in almost any piece of electronics, whether it's computers, amateur radios. You'll find it in anything that's a piece of technology that's got some type of timing associated with it. You're going to find a crystal. And if you look, if you Google it, you'll see they're usually a little aluminum covered piece of electronics that is on your motherboard somewhere. And in some cases, there are multiple crystals on your motherboard. What's interesting about these crystals is they keep time very, very well. You give them a little bit of power and they're very consistent in their timekeeping. It's like a perfect metronome for the entire system. So they are the conductor of the system, and they're keeping everything in time across that. As we mentioned earlier, when you're working with memory is expecting information to be sent synchronously on a central time clock, on a central time stamp. And we measure memory and how fast the memory is by how many times it transfers memory information in a certain time frame. So that's where this crystal, everything starts and ends with that crystal that's on our motherboard. What usually happens is the crystal runs at a very slow rate relative to everything else in your system. And then you have multipliers that are then used to run other things faster. Kind of like in an orchestra, there's a single beat, but of course there could be faster beats within that. That's exactly the same way everything else works. So your bus that's inside of your computer, the memory transferred inside of your computer, everything that's synchronized in your computer all comes back to that central clock, that central crystal, to make sure that everything is kept in the same time beat with everything else that's running all at the same time. It's quite an interesting piece of technology.
Yeah, so what I was wondering is, say you have a clock speed of 4 gigahertz.
Sure.
So that's if I'm not mistaken, that's 4 billion times a second.
Right.
And so does that crystal vibrate that fast?
It does not. In fact, if it did, the crystal probably wouldn't work very well after a certain amount of time. It would vibrate itself into pieces. It usually runs much slower. It could run a 10 times slower or more to be able to operate. It runs at an amount that is many times slower than almost anything inside of the computer. The crystal, as I said earlier, relatively slow compared to everything else. But there's always a multiplier that is associated with everything else. So for the CPU, it's a multiplier of the crystal that has it running at a particular speed. And that's why if you ever go into the CPU, you ever do any overclocking of a CPU, there are certain overclocking steps, and those steps are associated with the multiplier of the crystal that you happen to have running on that motherboard.
I see. And the second item that I was interested in is that Ethernet over. I guess that's a way for connectivity of remote computers. I always thought that, using a wireless adapter was the way to go, but can you explain a little bit more about this then?
Yeah, this is a technology that is a little bit of controversy because Ethernet over power. People in the chat room saying power over Ethernet. No, it's the other way around. It's Ethernet running over your power lines inside of your house. That's really what we're talking about. So that you could plug into a power connector that is upstairs and you're able to communicate over Ethernet with a power connection downstairs. In fact, there are little blocks you plug into your power, and there's Ethernet connectors commonly that will plug into the block. And that is, you'll find lately, we don't use a whole lot of that these days, probably because wireless has gotten so good and so fast. And the controversial part of this is that the power systems in our homes were never made to be networks. And what we have found, especially amateur radio operators have found, is when you start putting signals onto the power lines, that those signals tend to spuriously get outside of your house and create conflicts with other radio systems that are out there. So although it works great inside of your house and it's not intended to work outside of your house, this is not something where you can plug this in and communicate to an ISP. It's only for use inside of your single power system. Unfortunately, it also sometimes creates problems for other radio systems that might be outside of your house. So that's why there's been a little bit of a fight back and forth. Those systems have gotten a little better over the years and have gotten a lot better at not sending out these spurious signals, but it still happens from time to time. But what we've sort of found is that the technology itself has become less important. There's not as many products on the market anymore for Ethernet over power, probably because the wireless 802.11 wireless has just gotten so good and so fast inside of our homes that we've just simply used that to be able to do it. 5 gig networking goes, and we can have repeaters now, and it goes so quick that we'd rather do that rather than send it over our power lines. But you'll still find some of it out there. You can still buy it, and you can still use it, and it may apply for certain situations where you just can't get a wireless signal from point A to point B, but you can get power from point A to point B. Maybe that's what you'd use it for.
Well, thank you for your time. I find that studying this A-plus information is a lot more practical, at least on my standpoint, than the Security Plus was. And I'm looking forward to building my first computer, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun. Best of luck, Ed.
Thank you, sir.
Ed's doing it the same way that I did it, by the way, because I got my Security Plus first, then I got my Network Plus second, and then I got my A+. I did it exactly backwards. At least you're going back and kind of restarting the effort through all of those. I will also tell you, though, if you're concerned about Security Plus and renewal, the CompTIA did update their Cert Master CE to cover the 501 exam. So if you took the 501, you can use Cert Master CE to renew your Security Plus certification in just a few hours. You don't have to collect CEUs. You don't have to take another exam. You don't have to pay annual maintenance fees. You don't have to do any of that. You simply purchase the CertMaster CE for Security Plus, and it's sort of an online app thing that they do online. You have to take a read through and take answer questions. You have to get all the questions right. If you don't get all the questions right, just take the test again. And it's a very quick way to go through the new topics of Security Plus, and you're certified in just a few hours. So if any of you are coming up to the last day and you realize, oh, I didn't renew my certification, it's the last day to renew it, you can purchase that, get it done, submit it that day, and you're renewed for another 3 years. So that's another thing to think about if you're in that situation. Back to the phone lines, 240. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi. My name is Michael Wilson.
Hi, Michael. What can we do for you?
Oh, okay. First and foremost, I would like to say thank you for your service, and you are an inspiration to me. And I appreciate so much your knowledge and the fact that you're willing to share this knowledge, especially for free. It's unbelievable. So my concern is I am 44 years old, and I have for a long time been into computers in the IT industry. And I have just recently, I would say as over the past year, decided to pursue it. But I've been concerned about my age because, there's a lot of people that are also going for these jobs that have, college degrees and things of that nature, and they're much younger and things like that. So I was just curious to know that, or I guess I wanted to know, is it practical for me to pursue this industry, considering that, once you go for jobs and they see how old you are, they probably question how much experience you have. And most of my experience is, around my home. I've built a computer before, and I understand a lot of the aspects. But I'm just curious to know from your perspective, at my age, is this a practical thing to continue to pursue?
Well, first, Michael, you're older and smarter than any of these kids. You've brought some of them into the world. You can take them out again. You got that. You got at least that to fall back on. I would say being a little more worldly actually does help in an IT position, and being able to talk to other people at a more mature level does have some advantages associated with us. But let's talk about the realities of changing careers sort of in midlife, because it's something that I get a lot of emails and a lot of people talk about to me, which is they were nursing, now they're going to go into IT. They were a truck driver, they want to go into IT. They worked in transportation, they worked in they were a police officer, they want to go into IT. A lot of people are finding IT as a very attractive type of job to have for many reasons. And I get it. And I'm a big proponent of it. So I couldn't agree more. But there are things that you are going to find when you make the shift there's some negatives and there's some positives. So let's do the negatives first. One is that when you move from a career that you've been working on for 10 or more years and you move into IT, now you're having to start sort of down a little lower than where you were. And you may be on the help desk with a bunch of whippersnappers who just got a college degree and they know everything there is to know about how that mouse works. But one of the disadvantages of that is now there's a less money that you usually make when that happens. That doesn't always happen, but that can be a significant thing to think about, is you have to have at least enough savings so that you can handle kind of the restarting process of kind of starting at the help desk and working your way up. However, if you want to shift that around and look at the positive side of this, you've probably been working some type of job for the last 10, 20 years. There's some type of institutional knowledge you have. If you were working as a truck driver, you have knowledge of shipping and logistics. If you worked as a nurse, you have knowledge of how a hospital operates. If you worked as a police officer, you have law enforcement knowledge that you can bring to the table. And companies that handle logistics, companies that handle hospitals, and companies that handle law enforcement all have significant IT departments associated with them. So you may be able to take knowledge that you have, which has nothing to do with IT and bring them into the IT area, because one of the biggest challenges IT departments have is somehow bridging the gap between setting up Windows Server and how that ultimately helps to logistically move traffic across the country, to run things inside of a hospital, to catch the bad guy if you're in law enforcement. There's all of these challenges that you would have knowledge that other people don't have because they haven't been doing this for very long. The other thing that I would highly recommend that you leverage, and if you're not doing this already, start doing this, is you need to start putting together your LinkedIn connection. You need to start linking in everybody you work with now, everybody you've worked with in the past, get them all together on your LinkedIn page, because people you know are going to probably be your best advocate when you want to get that IT job, whether they are someone who's working in IT or not. If you go into that hospital and you say, I'm interested in that hospital job working in IT, and I happen to know the person who works in this nursing department, I happen to know the person who works in the anesthesiology department, and they're in a different part of the hospital. But it's surprising, knowing someone who already works there, how powerful that is, how important that is when you're trying to get a job in IT, when you're really trying to get a job anywhere. Knowing someone who's already works there is a huge part of this. So this is the time where you have to start networking. I don't mean computer networking, I mean people networking, getting all these people together, because the links that they have, even asking a question of everybody in your LinkedIn group saying, hey, I'm really interested in getting a job in IT. Does anyone know someone I can talk to? They may be able to give you a connection that you don't have in your LinkedIn, but now you can kind of hop over and talk to that person about what they would need. And I think when you're older, you can also ask better questions, and you can be very upfront with people. How much does this job pay? What do I need to learn to be able to earn money in this job? What do you want to see somebody move out of the help desk position and move up into workstation management, network management, security in the organization, or whatever it happens to be? Those are the things that I think we're a little more driven, because we've already been down this road before. We already sort of know how to get out of where we happen to be. So although there is a tinge of ageism that you do have to look for and watch out for in the industry, I think it's possible for us to be able to leverage the people we already know to be able to override the ageism piece of this and really focus more on how can I get a job that can help me use these skills, help me learn, and help me move up as I go. Because once you get into IT, it's really just an enormous move up. You're just constantly moving up. There is no ceiling. It's very different than other industries you happen to be in. So those are, for someone who's moving from one type of job into IT, those are some of the things that are good and bad. But I think if you manage it properly and you have the right expectation of what is coming and what position you'll be in, that you could set up a very good strategy of how to get started, how to move up, and where you can go from there. And maybe that's the piece that's going to work for you.
I really appreciate that answer. And I don't know, it's like the floodgates have just been opened and it's full steam ahead for me. So I really appreciate your honesty and your knowledge, and I will take that with me as I continue on my IT journey. And I just have one quick question.
Sure.
In virtualization, what do you feel like will be a little more advantageous to learn in VirtualBox or VMware?
I think either one of those is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. They're almost identical in how they operate and how they work. The user interface slightly different between them. I think if you're knowledgeable in VirtualBox, then you're just fine. You can probably take that knowledge and apply it to any client-based virtualization tool that you will find. So the one thing that probably would be a difference, something to think about, is if you understand the nomenclature, you understand the language that they use on the VMware products, you can use that same knowledge of the way they talk about things to load up some of the higher end enterprise virtualization tools. So if you're looking at a job where you're doing more virtualization with ESI, with doing the larger VMware technologies and doing more with cloud computing in general, VMware might be a better place to start. But I think if you may not have money to spend on some of the VMware products. You may just want to be able to download something and run with it, and VirtualBox works perfectly well to get started on the virtualization side.
Professor, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and I hope you and your family are staying safe in this pandemic. Thank you so much.
Same to you, sir. Best of luck. That's one of those things, I think, when you start trying to break down how do you even go through that path? That's a big change to go from doing a job you've been doing a long time. You have that institutional knowledge in what you do. First, it's kind of scary to make the jump. You're now the competition's very different. It's a different environment to work in. You kind of have to go back on your skills. Soft skills are so important in that. And it's one of those things. If you ever get in a situation where you're trying to figure out how do I work through these soft skill problems, you've already been around the block. You've already had the arguments. You've already learned how to work in a workplace. Yeah, those are the situations you kind of have to deal with. And I think we work pretty much better. Once we get older, we have kids, nothing bothers us anymore. We can kind of look at the landscapes now and make better objective decisions. When I was younger and working in technology, I was very headstrong and no, that's the wrong way to do it. And you're doing all of this wrong. And why aren't you listening to me? But there's always a method to the madness. There is always a reason behind the scenes that we don't know about. And it sometimes helps if we're able to take a step back and figure that out. And I think age brings a little bit of that on, if I may. I'm, of course, still very, very young. So maybe I don't know as much about that. 808 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Rosemary. I'm calling from Hawaii.
Hi, Rosemary. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
So I purchased your Core 1 and Core 2 bundles.
Oh, thank you.
And it's really great content, by the way. Thank you for kind of separating out. It makes it easier for focusing on one core. But my main question was just, what would you recommend if I want to get additional performance-based questions?
Those are probably one of the top questions, is more performance-based questions. I tried to cram as many as I could into that practice exam book. There are 15 in there, so at least you have something to pull from. But I think after doing the 15, you say to yourself, well, I need more of this. I had somebody ask me this previous week, I need 100 performance-based questions, please. Where can I find those? I said, I don't know. I don't know where you'd find 100 of them, brother. That's a lot of performance-based questions. The one thing that I think most people need to remember about the performance-based questions, though, is that they are asking you questions that come directly from the exam objectives. So it's not that they're finding new things to ask of you. They're asking you about things you already know about. They're just asking you in a different way. They're asking you in matching questions and fill in the blank and pull down messages and configurations that you have to do. Some of those are a little more hands-on. I think most of the time when I talk to people about those, I tell them get as much lab time as you can. You know, if you're setting up a wireless network at home, then you've been down the road of figuring out, where do I configure SSID suppression? Where do I turn on and turn off the DHCP server functionality? How do I configure the WPA2 password in my access point that we're going to use everywhere else? And I think one of the things that I go back to were those recommendations on my website, on my A+ study resources, that are the practice exams. I think those are great hands-on that you can get. The practice exam labs have bunches of labs, as the caller earlier was saying. They go into much more detail than you ever get on the exam, and I think that's a good thing, because they really go through and teach you how to step through these skills, how to use Windows in this way, how to troubleshoot startup problems, how to use printer connections, how to build out all of those different things that you would need to build out with Windows. I think those are good ones to use as well. And a lot of the books that you have good labs in them as well. So you may be able to find some good hands-on with those. Once you go through some hands-on, you've done the troubleshooting, you've worked through all of those, I think that's a great place to go. I think that's a great start there. You can kind of apply those back to other performance-based questions. In worst case, if you're just looking for practice questions, there's plenty more out there in the industry, both books and online, that could also help from a performance-based question perspective too. There's not 100 of them, but you may be able to find another handful here and there. So that might help, Rosemary.
Okay, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Great content that you put online.
I appreciate the
Thanks for your
support.
support.
Thanks for calling. That's fantastic. I do appreciate the support. We would not be able to do these study groups without you. So thank you so much. Let's get back to where the labs I was talking about are on my website. It is on ProfessorMesser.com under the Core 1 or Core 2 training options. There's an option down here for A+ study recommendations. There it is. And that takes you to the A+ study resources page. And on there are resource 1 is my videos. Resource 2, get a good book. Resource 3, get plenty of hands-on. And resource 4 is lots of Q&A. The resource 3, plenty of hands-on, is where the labs are. So that's the practice labs for those. That's what that was. Yeah, tons of great practice labs on there. For A+, a lot of labs that they have on there, and they're all in your browser. So, and it's all real systems. It's all virtualized with real systems. They're not on a rail. They just give you a virtual environment, and you're working through multiples of those. They focus on the 1002 exam because most of the hands-on that you're going to have on the A+ certification exam are for 1002. It's hard to find the 1001s. I think my practice exam book probably is the best one for doing that, but there may be others out there that you may be able to find. Let's go back to the phones, though. The 315 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is William Forbes. I have a question for you.
Hit me.
I'm trying to figure out if the A+ is actually worth it for me. I love tech, and I've been, it's a very interesting path for me. I've been doing it for like 15 years or so. But in my particular area, there's not a whole lot of jobs available or out here. And I don't really have anything lined up per se. So I've just been trying to really figure out if it's actually worth taking the exam.
It's a valid question, and a question we should all ask before we start going down this road. Getting a certification exam like A+ is an extensive investment, not only in the money of buying the exam, but it's a big investment of time and learning all of this content and materials. And ostensibly, there's got to be some reason we're doing it. I think the vast majority of people that are getting their A+ certification are getting it because they're trying to get a job or trying to get a better job. And there's probably a job description that they've been reading or that they've seen where employers are looking for the A+ certification. So there's sort of a means to that end. There's a reason that they're going through the process of getting the A+ certification. Of course, there's probably a subset of people that, I've spoken with them, that are getting the A+ certification because they want to learn more about this technology. They don't necessarily have a particular end reason for doing it that deals with a job, but they kind of feel that it would give them a nice rounded set of knowledge to be able to step into the industry and start doing things. And they would like to know more about the hardware and the operating systems and get a little bit more personal knowledge on that. Some of those people don't even take the exam. They simply go through the course to learn as much as they can, and then they start using that wherever they happen to go. They don't even bother getting the certification because they don't have a reason to have the certification, at least not right now. So to your point, there may not be a good reason to get the A+ certification, or you may have gone into your area. In fact, what I recommend a lot of people doing is going out and looking at what jobs are available in your area, see what IT jobs people have. These days, a lot more of the IT jobs are remote because they can hire people. You're not going into an office anymore. I've noticed that a ton of remote troubleshooting jobs have opened up in my particular geography for companies that are not headquartered or even have a presence in my geography. I just happen to be in a capital city of a state. So they're coming to the capital city of the state thinking there's got to be people working at home who can help us because everybody's working at home right now. So that may help you in your efforts because you'll go out and look at jobs. Go to Indeed.com, go to themonster.com, go to Dice.com, go to wherever, go to LinkedIn to look at LinkedIn jobs. See what people are asking for in your geography. You may find there's nothing there. So, okay, well, A+ may not make sense for you. Or you may find that there's more jobs that have cropped up there recently. And you may find that, okay, they're wanting an A+ certification. They're wanting a Microsoft certification. They're wanting whatever that certification happens to be. Maybe that's what helps makes the decision for you. Otherwise, it's kind of up to you. You have to decide whether the value is there. You have to decide whether there really is a means to that end.
Yeah, see that's that's helpful right there. Also, too, the second part of this question really is, okay, let's just say if I pass and I get my A+ certification, and like I said, I necessarily don't have a job that I'm going into now. So how do I keep basically my certification without actually necessarily using it because I don't have a job right now that pertains to it?
Right. Well, the first thing is that at least when you earn the certification, it's good for 3 years. So as soon as you pass the second exam of the two, you can take them in any order you would like, but as soon as you pass that second exam, the clock starts ticking for 3 years. So that's a pretty good ramp if you're ever trying to keep a certification. 3 years is a very long time to have that. But I realize there may be cases, maybe yours is one of those, where you may not use this for 3 years. This may not be a technology or even a certification that's very useful to you for 3 years. And I would point back to renewing it because you can keep that certification renewed and never take the exam again. In fact, most people simply renew the certification. They never take the exams again. And in the case of CompTIA, you can watch seminars like this. You can attend other training courses. You can earn other certifications, or you can simply take their CertMaster CE and it will renew it for another 3 years by simply taking their online test. So, and they're really, it's more of a computer-based training. It's not a test. It's a CBT. So that's one where you could just keep renewing it every 3 years until you're tired of renewing it. And you would still be able to maintain that A+ certification, even if you weren't working in the business.
All right. Yeah, that's very helpful. Because like I said, I mean, it almost seems to me, in my personal life, in my personal experience, I am very interested in computers. Like I said, I've been doing it, for quite some time, just not in a professional setting. So, and it's something that I find value in myself, not necessarily with a job. I mean, that's a hope of mine,
right?
That will lead to it. So in the meantime, I got to figure out how I can keep that certification up without actually using it in a professional setting. And I'm pretty sure I read on the CompTIA site that you have to maintain 20 CUs within that 3 year period.
Yeah, for the A+, I think it's 20 or 25, somewhere in there. Yeah, that's right.
So in that case, I know, like you said, your seminars are worth like one for an hour.
Yeah, but you can only have a certain number of webinar category CEUs during that 3 year period. So you would not be able to watch 20 of these and renew your certification. That'd be way too easy. They know that, so they're not going to do that. You have to do different types of things to earn all of those CEUs.
Gotcha. So what I really got to do is I really got to go to the CompTIA website and figure out the CEUs part. So if I do pass it, and if I do take it and then pass it, trying to keep that certification up.
I have a video that I made called How to Renew Your CompTIA Certification in Just a Few Hours. And it goes through not just the CertMaster CE, which is the answer to that question of how you do that, but I also go through all the other ways to do it and give the advantages and disadvantages. What is the advantage and disadvantage of collecting CEUs? What's the advantage and disadvantage of taking a higher level certification? So I try to step through each one of those and give you not only the the time and materials advantage and disadvantages, but also the money advantage and disadvantages, because each one of those costs a different amount of money depending on what you do.
All right. So, I mean, by the sound of it, I just got to do a little bit more research and really decide if I really want to pursue this. And then if I do want to pursue it, just how to keep it up.
You're on the right track.
So well, thank you. I am very appreciative of the work that you do. And, just every day, people like me calling in, it's really helpful. And there's not really a whole lot of resources out there for something like this.
I don't know why, but we're going to go with it. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Best of luck.
Thank you.
It's one of those challenges. Whenever you start getting into the industry, you start trying to figure out what is the best way to get in. Am I doing the right thing? What resources do I need? It is a little bit of a mire. There's so many different directions to go. I think it's really about setting a strategy and following that path. There's no single way to do it. There's no best way to do it. The best way is kind of the way that makes sense for you. Let's go back to the phones. 520 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling for Tucson, Arizona.
Thanks for calling.
Hi, and first off, I want to thank you for all the content you provide to the public. It's really helpful for everybody.
I appreciate it.
Right now I'm 23, and I've been studying the A+ for a whole year. And my question is, I feel like I've been waiting for too long to take the test. And I took the test one time and I failed it. And I feel like I just haven't retook it, just lack of fear of failing it again.
That's fair. Is there a particular, did you just take one of the exams? Did you take both of them? What was the particular situation?
I just took one of them. I just took the 901 when it was the 901. Okay,
so that's old school. It goes back a little bit. So was there a particular reason you were planning to get this certification, or something you're working towards, or is there a particular requirement that's expected of you?
I want to get a really good job that is going to open the doors, and later on I want to start, knowing how to build applications with coding and things like that.
All right,
but at least I want to get in the door with IT.
I think A+ is a good place to start down that road. Although I will tell you, if you're interested in programming and doing coding, that's a very different part of technology than A+ and IT. I tend to put these in two separate diagrams. If you look at the Venn diagram of both of those, you have a circle that is information technology and a circle that is what I call computer science, which is people who write programs and make code work. And if you were to put those circles together, they may be touching a little bit in the middle, but those two circles do not overlap much at all. The IT people tend to be on one side and handle the operations, keeping the network running, keeping the data safe. And then the computer science side are the people building applications, building hardware to run that code on, creating and engineering new pieces of hardware. And that's a completely different side of technology. There isn't a little bit of interrelationship between them, but it's very little. And if you're interested in doing coding, the A+, Network+, Security+, it doesn't really fit into that. If you are interested in IT, then of course A+, and Network+, Security+, Microsoft, VMware, all of those fit very well into what you're interested in doing. Or the case may be, as it was with me starting out, what do I even do? I'm not even sure what I'm interested in yet. Let me at least get some knowledge under my belt, and then I'll figure out what I like to do based on that. And that's kind of how it worked for me, is once I started as a field service technician that was replacing cables, delivering hard drives, installing memory upgrades, just the basics of technology. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I like operating systems. I like Windows. I like working with these, and kind of followed that path. And eventually it goes from there. So that may be a good place for you to go as well. A+ is a great place to start with that, because it's very broad and kind of gives you a broad perspective of many different technologies that you can then get familiar with. Is there a particular, once you you're going down this path. You've gone down this path before. You know that there must be some jobs in your area or that you've seen before that are looking for A+. What do you think was the biggest thing stopping you originally, and what do you think you're doing now to get past that point?
Well, I currently just bought your book with the practice test.
Right.
And I've been taking it. I want to, get ready to take the test. And like I said, I feel like it's just lack of fear because I felt it already one time, and I just don't want the same thing to happen again.
I think for you, the key is going to be the exam objectives. The CompTIA exam objectives list out every single thing you should know when you go in to take the exam. It is a comprehensive list of everything. And if you can go through that list and explain to someone else what is on that list, then you're ready for the exam. I tell people all the time, if you can't explain to someone the information that's on that list, you're not ready to take that exam. So I'm going to bring up, for example, the 221,001 exam objectives. We'll bring that up and have a look at it on the screen. And I'm going to show others that haven't seen this before what I mean by that. So here are, let's do a full page here. And let me show you the exam objectives. So there's the A+ exam objectives, the 221,001. That's the first page. It gives domain information of what you need to know. That's interesting, but that's not exactly what we're shooting for. The part that gets really interesting is you start with the first domain. So mobile devices. So let's have a look at mobile devices. I'm going to bring this up a little bit bigger so you can see it. Given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components, and you have to understand hardware and device replacement of keyboards, hard drives, which include SSDs, hybrids, and magnetic disks, the difference between 1.8-inch and 2.5-inch, memory, smart card readers, optical drives, wireless cards, Bluetooth modules, cellular cards, video cards, mini PCI Express, screen, DC jack, battery, touchpad, plastics frames, speaker, system board, and CPU. That's a lot of little pieces of a hardware that you would need to know about on a laptop. But that's what they expect you to be able to know, just to know the topics associated with section 1.1 of the first domain of mobile devices, because there's also a section 1.2, a section 1.3, section 1.4, and so on. So it just goes on and on and on as you go through this set of pieces. I'm just going to quickly circle through all of these so that people can get a kind of a feel for this. There are pages and pages and pages and pages of these things that you need to know. So there's your checklist. If you were ever trying to figure out, am I ready to take this exam? That's how you know if you're ready. Do you know every single one of the bullets that's on that list? Let that be your guide. Let that be your checklist. And if you don't know it, if you can't explain that topic to someone else, circle that one. And you need to study more up on that piece. When you've got all of these in your brain, you've figured out all these pieces, then you're ready to take the exam. I think that's a very good barometer that almost anybody can use to know when they're ready to take the exam. And I would say if you can tell someone all of these different topics, you're going to do fine on the exam when you walk in the room.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. I
appreciate the call. You can get those exam objectives for free on the CompTIA website. It's or go to the Google and type in CompTIA Exam Objectives. It'll take you right to them. Or you go to professormesser.com/objectives. There's a link there that take you right to them. So that's how valuable they are, is you need to have these and use them as your checklist. Incredibly important. To the 773 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. Are you there in Chicago? Caller.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for calling.
Hi.
Yeah, my name is Joe.
Hey, Joe.
I have a question. I'm all over the place.
Me too.
I'm a first time trying to get into IT. And my question is, I'm an older guy. I'm like 52 years old. And I'm like all over the place. I studied 901 and 902. I never took the test. So now I get your and also
you're doing fine. You may want to turn down that stream a little bit.
Guy.
Yep.
And I know I'm not sounding like all over the place. Okay, you turned it down.
Great.
But my question is now, I know this is going to sound crazy. I'm trying to be consulting. Do you think I'm moving too quick to be a consultant?
Well, it's about where you start, not necessarily where you end, because I think the path you take is going to have so many different directions on where you go. If you're just getting into the industry, then consulting is something to look to work towards. You don't usually start in a consulting role as someone who's new to the industry. You usually start in a service desk, help desk, customer support type of job. They get you learning some of the topics and content and seeing if you know how to work with other people, which is sometimes helpful as well. And then once you sort of learn the basics of technology, then you learn about operating systems, or you become an expert in a particular niche of application. Then at that point is a good place to transition into the consulting side of things. Usually consulting roles have a very specific niche. So you would be someone who has an expertise in Microsoft server operating systems, or you're a Linux expert, or you're very good at web services, or you're cloud service expert. You know, those types of expertise allow you to become more of a technical or consultative role within organizations. Not usually where you start, though. Usually you have to get the knowledge. You have to build from there. The good part, though, especially with technology, is the speed at which you build is really dependent on you. That's really dependent on how quickly you can learn those topics, how much you can understand what's there, how quickly you're able to apply those, and then how quickly you can move up from there. Not a crazy plan at all. If you want to be a consultant, there's plenty of jobs in IT to do that type of thing, and plenty of levels to do that. You could work for a private company as a consultant. You could work for a value-added reseller as a consultant. You could work for a manufacturer as a consultant or professional services technologist. Tons of opportunity that are jobs that might be in your hometown, or they might be one where you travel around the world. That's the crazy part of IT is there's jobs of different kinds, of different scopes, no matter where you go. So it's not a crazy idea, but it does take a strategy and a plan and some time to get to that point. But the opportunities are absolutely there. Still with us, Joe? I think we might be on the delay for you. Are you still there, Joe?
Yeah, I'm still there. Okay, it was delayed, but my second question, then I'm gonna let you go. I'm taking like 12 classes. Is that too many classes to take? But they're all IT classes.
How many total classes are you taking? And that's at the same time?
It's a bundle. At the same time they go next to each other, so it's not actually. It's just a bundle.
Okay.
Of classes.
Got it. A lot of places do that in a lot of different ways, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to do it, as long as they do one at a time. My son is currently getting a cloud computing degree, and they do 2 classes a month. And they just keep going. The next month is another 2. The next month is another 2. So he's got tons of them just lined up, and they do it that way. And that's a perfectly reasonable way to do it. If you're doing one of those, it's a lot of information at one time. So the only thing I would recommend is that if there's a part of those technologies you're going through that really interests you, make sure you make a note so that you can circle back to that when this entire thing is over with. It sounds like you might be in the middle of a very specific type of training regimen that gives you a lot of information at one time, which has advantages because you're able to learn a lot of things all at one time. The disadvantages is you're never going to retain all of that at one time. So circling back to some of those is really going to help you for what you're doing. But I think you've got the right plan. You've got a goal. You know what you want to do. You know there's a consultant role out there that really appeals to you. You should absolutely work towards that goal. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but the jobs are absolutely out there for you to go get. It's just now a matter of time of making that happen. I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you for calling. Let's go to the next caller, which is the 347. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where you're calling from?
Hello, Professor Messer. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Hi. My name is Ravel Rojas, and I'm originally from New York, but now I live in Houston. And when I moved here, the school district I was in, fortunately, they were very supportive. They had a program for technical education, and that's how I got my CompTIA A plus certification.
Nice.
So they paid for it all.
Fantastic.
And I've been working with the same school district every summer for the past 2 years, and I've been getting experience. But I am worried because my certification expires in May 2021. I got it back in 2018. So my question is, can I leverage the experience I got as working as like an intern for that school district as a technician for the CEUs, or will I have to do something else?
It's probably going to be a combination of things. On the CompTIA website, the renewal section under continuing education, they step you through all the different ways to renew. We talked a little bit about this earlier, is that they will have you collect CEUs is a very common way to do it. Taking a higher level certification is a common way to do it. Taking certifications from a third party that are not CompTIA can potentially provide you with CEUs. That's another way to do it. Taking the newer version of the certification, which I don't recommend, but you could do that if you wanted to, or doing the CertMaster CE, which will renew your certification in just a few hours. So they kind of have a broad scope of the things that you could do to possibly renew, but you're thinking the right way, which is let's not let this expire. We don't want to have to retake all the exams again. They give you so many different ways to renew. Just spend some time on the CompTIA website, find the way that works for you, or watch the video I created, which is how to renew your certification in just a few hours, where I step through each one of those, and you can kind of get a feel for that, which one might work better for what you're doing.
Okay, thank you so much for the insight. I hope you have a wonderful time teaching everyone else. Everyone that's about to take an exam, I wish them good luck.
Me too.
Bye.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the call. Hear that, everybody? We're sending good vibes to all of you. A lot of people send me emails during the week as well saying, I'm going to take my exam. I always try to send some good vibes back. I'm absolutely sure it helps. Can't possibly be a bad thing. Let's go to 513. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hello, Professor Messer. My name is Chris Stubbs, and I'm calling from Cincinnati, Ohio.
And you've called before, Chris. What can we do for you?
I heard you mention the VMware certifications. I've been looking into getting the VCA certification.
Yeah.
Which is their equivalent to like the ITS fundamentals or whatever it's called, the CompTIA.
Yep, it's a good starting point.
And also, when do you have any idea when you're going to be putting out any of the Linux certifications, or updating your old CompTIA Linux Plus certification that you have on your channel already?
I have a handful of videos I did way back in the day. They're well out of date at this point. They have only a moderate perspective of or relevance to the current Linux Plus and how it works, or really Linux in general. It's kind of an older set of videos, and I only did a handful of them. At one time, I thought I was going to create an entire Linux Plus certification, and it just did not work out. It was not a good fit for me, and it wasn't a good fit, I think, for the people who wanted to watch it, and I know that because they told me so. So that was one of the reasons I did not continue with creating it. The Linux people are very different than the Windows people. Don't know if you're aware of this, but it just was not a love connection. One of the things that I do, though, is I still have it on my list. I have a very long list. It's a very big list of a lot of things. And I would like to eventually get back and do Linux Plus. I think that's, or a Linux certification. It doesn't even have to be Linux Plus. It could be a Red Hat certification even, but there's I think a good group of people really would like to have that type of content. It's not something that is currently incoming. It's not something I'm currently working on, or that I could even provide a time frame on. It's just on a big list of things. Right now, my focus is on getting the latest Security Plus updated. And then after that, there's some things I'm thinking that might make sense to do, and I'm not sure Linux is going to be one of those. But to your question about VMware, I think that's an exceptional group of certifications to get, primarily because VMware is just everywhere. You walk into anybody's company or an enterprise, they at least have some level of VMware they happen to be using in their environment. There's such a huge emphasis in cloud computing and having the VMware be the engine underneath the surface. Being able to do the cloud computing piece of this at an operations level becomes incredibly important. And when you start working with these virtual platforms, there's certainly a need for it. And I think some of those entry-level VMware certifications might even be free. So why not take advantage of that? It makes for something good you can put on your resume as well. Both of those good places to go. Linux certifications and virtualization type certs are great things to have right now. They fit right into the cloud computing pieces. They have a broad scope. Practically every company in the world has both of those things. Why not add them to your resume? It makes sense to me, Chris.
Yep. Is there any chance that you could put a one of the 98365 or 98367 on your channel?
It's another.
Anytime soon?
Microsoft has had a lot of changes to their certifications most recently. Just before we all went into lockdown, they made some dramatic changes to their certifications. They kind of threw out an emphasis in operating systems and threw in an emphasis in cloud computing, and specifically their Azure products. But they still have some core technology certifications in there. I've not, from someone who creates content and wants to create relevant content, having a company make such a dramatic change to their offerings for certification caused me pause, caused me to hold on a second. What's going on? What are you guys doing? There is a dramatic difference of what they're working on with this. I'm really looking to see how, at this point, everything's kind of calmed down, probably because we all went into lockdown. But I'm really interested to see where people pick it up and run with it. The piece for me that's most important is that I not only create content, but I create content people can use. And if I create content for a course that it ends up nobody watches, then that doesn't help anybody. And ultimately, I'm trying to get people a job or get them a better job. So there's a combination of things that go into this. It's a weird formula of things I put together to figure out what I'm going to do. Currently, Microsoft isn't in the formula. They kind of threw themselves out of the formula a little bit. I'm still watching them. I'm still keeping an eye on them. I would like to see them figure out where the relevance is. But right now, they are not top of my list, unfortunately, Chris.
Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate the call, but I appreciate you also asking about it too, because asking about it puts it on my list of things too. Oh, people are asking about that one. There's some that I get. Some people ask, hey, are you interested or have you thought about doing this certification? And I have to tell them, well, no, because you're the only person who's asked about that in the last 6 months. So I kind of take that as a non-scientific way to determine the interest. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. The people that come to my site that are getting an A+ Network Plus or Security Plus may not be the best people to ask about a VMware certification, because that's a completely different technology. It may not be the best people to ask about Microsoft. So I kind of have to use a lot of different tools to be able to figure out what that is. I can't say there's any perfect way to do that. I just keep asking people, what do you want? Tell me what you want. And if any of you have an interest, what do you want? Tell me. There's a contact us link at the top or the bottom of our website. You send it to me and say, I want this. And then I know. But until I kind of get that feedback, some of it solicited, some of it unsolicited, I kind of put those in different categories and run a big algorithm on it to figure out what am I going to do next. And sometimes it's just about what I'm able to handle. Where do I have enough time in the day? That does happen as well. Let's go back to the phones. 432 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, this is Jose Martinez. I'm calling from Maryland.
Hi, Jose. What can we do for you?
Hi. So my friend put me onto your channel. I'm trying to get into cybersecurity, and I'm trying to figure out, like, what do I have to do to, like, get a job in cybersecurity at entry level or something like that. He recommended me a couple of your videos.
Okay. There's a couple approaches that people are taking. The first challenge, of course, is that IT security, cybersecurity in general, is not something that there tends to be a lot of entry-level positions. I think if you work in a large geography, a very populous part of the world, if you're in a big city, there probably are very large companies there that do have security operations centers, or SOCs, SOCs. The security operations centers tend to be, that tends to be the help desk for security issues. So you can kind of see where there's a good fit there for entry level. If you can find a SOC position open, there are usually quite a few entry level positions because they need people to answer phones, monitor log files, monitor the SIM, monitor the different pieces, and manage issues when they happen to occur. So that's one place that's a very good entry level. There's not a lot of entry level positions in cybersecurity. Another approach that you might want to consider is that to be able to work in IT security where you're working with firewalls, intrusion prevention, virtual private networks, you're a lot of logging, a lot of trying to find threats and prevent threats, then you're probably going to need a very good foundation in networking. So that's another approach that people tend to take, is they don't start on the security side. They go off to the networking side, get the very strong foundation in networking, and then they move into a role where they can manage the firewalls, design the firewall implementation, manage the virtual private network configurations that are site to site, that are in client-based SSL VPN, that you need to implement these technologies into an existing routed or switched network, which means that you're going to have to implement this with a standby or active-active configuration. You're going to have some knowledge of the underlying switching infrastructure. You need to have some knowledge of your routing methods and the routing technologies that you're using. How do you fit that into a redundant routed configuration? So there's all these networking questions, has nothing to do with security, but it has to do with fitting the security technologies into the network. So that's the other approach, is if you can come around the other side of this from a networking perspective, that also positions you well on the cybersecurity side. Both of those are perfectly valid ways to start. I guess it kind of depends on what interests you the most, where you might have opportunities in your area, and where there might be jobs that you'd be able to move into.
Right. So, like, what would a good position to be starting in, like, because right now I don't really know too much about IT. I'm trying to get into it. I'm taking classes at Strayer University. I'm trying to get my associate's degree, but my friend said that certifications are more important than the degree.
Well, there's pluses and minuses to that. I did a video, it's on my channel, of how to get a job in IT with no experience. Because that's a position a lot of people are in, and it's a position, it's really what you're asking about right now, is how do I get in the door? And you might even get a formal education, you might even get a certification, but you still don't have the experience. So how do you get a job in IT with no experience? It's a 30-minute video. It's chock full of information. There's no way I could tell you everything that's in the video on this phone call. But it's worth your time to go through all 30 minutes, but it really approaches it in 4 different elements. And one of those is you need a formal education. It's valuable. Your AA degree, a 4-year degree, that's a valuable thing that employers are looking for. And it doesn't replace certification. And I don't necessarily think that certifications are better or worse than a formal degree. I think they work together. That's the second element. The third element is to have some type of experience, and that may be somewhere where you get some time that you're working with a third party. Maybe you do some contract work. Maybe you work for a volunteer for a particular organization, or you get some type of practical experience. I talk about ways to get that. And the fourth element, and one that you really can't miss, it's an important part of this, is that you know somebody who already works in that organization, either in the IT department or elsewhere in that company. Those are the 4 elements. And I in that video, I kind of stepped through how you can get those things if you don't have them now, and the advantages and disadvantages of having that. And that video is on my YouTube channel. And it's how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I think it applies to kind of the things you're asking about, because there's never one path. There's not one way to get there. I could give you here, do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, poof, cybersecurity. But everybody has a different path. They have a different way to get there. There's different jobs in cybersecurity, broadly different jobs in cybersecurity, that not everybody follows the same way to get there. You kind of have to jump in the boat and kind of follow your own path down that river. Everybody's river is just taken a different way.
Right.
Hopefully that gives you something to think about and something to research on. That might give you some perspectives, and you can always call back next month and we can follow up from there.
Sounds good, sir. I'm going to definitely check out those videos. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jose. I appreciate the call. It's one of the challenges we have. I think everybody has it, because when you get the 4-year degree, you get the certification, you get all those things you need to put in a pile so you can go to an employer and say, please hire me, look at the skills I have. That's a challenge. And to the point in the chat room, yes, having an education and having a certification is not the same thing as having experience. So those are 3 different things. All have advantages and disadvantages, all have importance to an employer. Some are more important than others. Some employers love the experience part of it. Some employers love the education part of it. Some employers prefer the certification part of it. You just never know what you're going to find. So that's the thing I would probably recommend for most folks is have a look at that video. It is 30 minutes. I know it's long. I made it as short as I could, but there's so much content there. So hit the cog wheel, maybe make it 1.5 times faster so you can get through it faster. But that's what I would recommend doing is go through that, see if some of those things get some other questions in your mind, and you're more than welcome to call back on the next study group. To mention that, we finished our Core 1 study group today. This is the 6th. On the 8th, 2 days from now on Thursday, we do this again, but it's with the Core 2 topics. So we're going to do another A+ study group on Thursday, noon Eastern time. You can always find out when the next event is going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar, and you can find out when we're going to do the next one. We'll do the whole thing. I've got more questions for you in the first hour. We'll open up the phone lines in the second hour and make all those things happen. And in the chat room, I know you asked at the very beginning, what is that song on the podcast? And if you will bear with me, either send me a message directly with the contact us, I will have that for you on the next study group. I got to find it. I don't even remember what the song is, but I will find it. And I'll find a link for you, and I'll send you directly to the site I bought it from so that I had the rights to be able to use it. So that's what we'll figure out. I appreciate you bearing with me. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being in the first hour. Thanks for hanging out in the second hour. We love it when you're here, and we'll see you in 2 days for the Core 2 study group. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time on the Core 1 A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.